We're going to call the student representatives meeting to order. And again, I apologize for my attire. Just finished shoveling out like many of you did today. And I wanted to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah and Happy Kwanzaa. And to a much, much better Happy New Year of 2021.
Yes.
That,
Amen.
You as well.
Middle and high school is in the house. Damien, I know you're working, so we want to go right to you, Damien Taylor, and he is supported by Mindy Rosegarden and Cynthia Sheehan. I don't know if Mr. Soccer, Principal Ryan Kelly's on the line, but Damien Taylor, you're on and you're it.
And also Camila Colon.
I know I have Camila Colon.
Right.
And I have Jalen Velasquez. But I figure we go with Damien first.
May I share my screen?
Yes.
We actually have a PowerPoint.
Well, yes, I want to know if you had an opening, not only opening statement, you have a PowerPoint statement. I usually
do.
So go right ahead.
All right, thank you. And we're off.
Well, good evening, everyone. We are the Springfield Conservatory of the Arts School. We are honored to be here, and thank you for your time and giving us a chance to represent this fine course and our beloved school. The representing hosts are me, Camila Colon, Damien Taylor, and Jalen Velasquez, but Jalen Velasquez, due to, well, the weather couldn't make it, but so we begin.
So how did we begin? This concept started as a community service club called Community Action Through the Arts. That was the Kata Club. So students in grades 6 through 12 participated in food drives and making sleeping mats and scarves for the homeless. We also had community engagement evenings, and there was so much energy from the students that it became a middle school class during second semester, and now it has morphed into a high school and middle school course.
Once immersed in a more course-focused agenda, thinking bigger was inevitable. We broadened our horizons by studying our current social and political issues to better understand when and how problems arise. For in order to have the ability to amend complex issues, we must explore and understand their inception, all the while respecting opposing opinions and welcoming differences and diversity among our young voices.
Ways we learn. So our first lesson started off as understanding to point out fake and false information that you find on media, like news sources, social media, because a lot of the times people actually post false articles or, they jump to conclusions when something comes out because they want the most views. And since our class has to do with a lot of our community and our country and even our world, it was really important for us to learn how to actually find reliable sources so that, we wouldn't be spreading the false information. We wouldn't be one of those people. So then after that, we turned our attention to racial injustice because that's still running rampant, and it's not right. So, we're learning about racial, sexuality, So we've been trying to figure out ways to figure out in our community what we can do and around other places to, help us understand and to help others understand, And then we also had different projects as well. Like we did 2 projects so far and they all involved arts and they were different types of arts. So, anybody really could do what they wanted. We could have did writing, creative writing, poetry, PowerPoints, digital art. You can do handwritten art. You can make a song or even find out a song. And so, everybody was included. We always found a different way to make somebody feel comfortable in our classroom.
Yeah. Some of those projects will be shown further into this presentation. Among those projects, and were what you saw previously to this slide, we created those posters sharing our values in hopes of inspiring fellow voters and emphasizing important issues that are important for us.
And now we have some quotes from our middle schoolers who are talking about the experience that they're having in our class. We have Nani, who says, the arts fit into everything. The way you express yourself, you can show in a deeper meaning what things mean and how you feel. Ruby says, this course shows how to make a change in the world, to change people's views through writing and art. Marie says, art can be something to make a change, not just for fun. Yes, he says, it's interesting the topics we go into. It's better for me. It's the things I'm interested in. The art portion is better for me to express myself in visual art, pictures, drawings, and paintings.
Yes. So here we see the artist Liz Pomales, who is one of our seniors. In this art piece, she stated, "In this art piece, I try to express the hurt in many people's hearts, especially Black people's hearts, for getting treated unfairly. They're hurting, they've been bruised, scarred, but they're still fighting to get the equality they deserve. We are all humans, so we should all get treated as such." Here we see Ari Wages, one of our juniors. She said, "This piece shows the hurt and suffering of Black people today and 100 years ago. The BLM in the eye shows the empowerment Black people feel towards the issue. The tears to the river to the blurred image underneath is the sad truth that connects then with now, with the oppressors not understanding the hurt, that just because Black people today aren't picking cotton, we're still the slaves to the white oppressor."
Jay Velasquez, who's the artist of this piece, says, "My art represents the equality between races that most people don't see. Blacks, whites, and many other races all bleed the same blood. We are all the same people. The only difference is our skin, race, and tradition." This piece is by Charisma Dotto. In this class, we're learning about the Black Lives Matters movement and how it's affecting our everyday lives. We talk about how police brutality is getting worse every day and how many innocent Black lives are killed daily. Recently, on one of our projects, we had to pick lyrics from a song and explain with a picture, writing from or pick our own song and explain how it goes with the Black Lives movement. This is the piece that she picked.
And lastly, but certainly not least, my own piece. So I recently discovered what spoken word really was. I knew it existed, but didn't know its name. And of course, I fell in love. This piece is a conjunction of some of my favorite lyrics of the song Black Lives Matter by Dax, with some of my own original lines. Though short, my goal was to make it impactful and of course meaningful. I, being a performer and thus storyteller at heart, wish to direct this piece for the wild universe of the stage. Then, can I truly bring some more elements to enrich the message and therefore convey it fabulously? Hold my hand. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. If you say nothing, you are an accessory to violence. Act. Speak up. Otherwise, you'd plead guilty just as much. Couple of bad cops can't define all you other boys. So every good cop needs to stand up and make noise. Alliance. Humanity's integrity is on you, just as it is on me. Don't wait for anyone to act, man. You go first. Let's get rid of this curse. Black, blue, white, green. Playing for the same team. Remember when we were kids and didn't see no color? And when we played in kindergarten and I called you my brother. Equality is the quality we need in this earth. I can breathe. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Great job. We'll see you on Broadway. Damien, very good. Ms. Rosengarten, thank you very, very much. And thanks again to the Conservatory of the Arts Middle School and the high school, and tell Principal Kelly and Dave Horrigan that I said hello to. Great, great work. All right, great
Thank
work.
you.
Thank you.
Valiant School is in the house.
Great job.
Supported by the Hoopsters' mom, Principal Rhonda Jacobs, Francis King, Assistant Principal, and Christine O'Connor. And I think Nazir Jackson in the house. Yeah, I see you, Nazir. I got you. I got you. So I don't know if administration wants to open up first, and then we'll go to Nazir.
Mr. King?
Hey, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. Yeah, we have Nasir Jackson coming. He's a great 8th grader who came to us from another school, and he's really had a phenomenal turnaround, and he's done some really good things for us this year, and he's just grown into a fine young man, and we're really happy to have him speak. So have at it, Nas. Good luck, buddy.
Hey, Naz.
Hey, so I'm Nasir Jackson. I'm in 8th grade, and when I first got to Valley, I wasn't expecting any change in my behavior because I always thought I was in the right. When I argued with someone, I thought I was in the right. But when I got there, I started to realize that a lot of the people there, they were nice. I didn't really think that, I heard of alternative school and I always felt like it was bad. I didn't think that my environment was going to change because I was around bad. But I started to realize that I was one who needed to change. And the teachers there, they really helped me. So, when I started being around them more, I started to realize that I wasn't always going to have to argue or talk back. I didn't have to be disrespectful. My environment changed, and so did I. I slipped up a couple times, but it was part of it. I had to change, and change doesn't happen overnight. So it was just part of that. My goal is to play football. I want to go to Central. That's my favorite team. So I'm working hard this year. I'm trying to make sure I get to the goal I want. And I'm just trying to make my teachers proud and my mom, my grandma. I'm going to stay focused on my goals, and I'm going to make sure I get to where I want to. So, yeah.
Nice job, Nazir. Keep
Yeah,
it
great job.
on and off the field, okay? That number one behind you, that's what you want to be, number one. Number one. Nice job. Nice job. We now go to Liberty Prep Academy High School Completion Program, supported by, again, Principal Rhonda Jacobs and Assistant Principal Jennifer McQuaid. And again, to Mom, Judy. Hope she's feeling well. Cynthia Ponte, we spoke a little earlier before the meeting started. So I'll turn it over to Principal Jacobs or Assistant Principal McQuaid if they have any opening statements, and then we'll go from there.
Hi, good night, good evening, everyone. So Cynthia is a student at the high school completion program. She came to us last year from Putnam Academy, and she is a phenomenal student. She is scheduled to graduate with her class of 2021 now. She's all caught up. And she has been online every day and has not missed a class, correct? Cynthia? Yeah.
Good for you, Cynthia.
A student. So go ahead, Cynthia.
You're on, Cynthia.
Hi, everyone. I'm a little nervous, but
You're doing fine.
hi. My name is Cynthia, and I am currently a senior at the high school completion program. And during the beginning of my junior year last year, I experienced some complications with my mental health where I couldn't physically attend high school anymore. So I then tried to look for an alternative to go to do school instead of dropping out to do school at home and still obtain a diploma as planned. So with that, I found high school completion, and I was doing online school with high school completion for my junior year, and then now I'm doing online schooling with my teachers daily, every day, and I'm on a good track, better than I was before. Sorry, I'm rambling.
Oh, you're doing fine.
You're doing a great job.
From the heart.
Thank you. But yeah, so although I didn't attend school physically, you all made me feel like as if I did. You guys always made me feel welcome, and for that I'm very grateful. And yeah, thank you.
Great job.
Good job, Cynthia. Thank you. And I think we
Cynthia wants to go on to work in early child care, correct? That's what she was doing at Putnam before, and I told her that because she's not there, she can still do that. She can go to Stick, she can go to the Elm, she can go anywhere she'd like.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Good luck.
Springfield High School is in the house, and again, supported by Principal Rhonda Jacobs and Roberto Ortiz, Assistant Principal, and Jeremiah Shimura Pass. We were talking a little early. Used to be on Groveland Street, right around the corner from me over there. So I'll turn it back over to Principal Jacobs?
And Mr. Ortiz.
Mr. Ortiz, yes. Roberto?
Yes, so I have the pleasure to introduce one of our seniors. He's grown tremendously in the past 3 years, socially and academically, and we're very proud of him. He's one of our role models. Right now, he's earning an A- in one of the toughest courses at the high school level, Algebra 2. So we're very proud of him. So it's an honor to introduce Jeremiah. He wants to move, he's determined to move on to college and pursue a career in computer programming. So Jeremiah, you have the floor.
Hey y'all, I'm Jeremiah. Like he said, I only arrived about 3 years ago in this school, mostly because I was failing in both a previous online school that I was doing and in Sci-Tech. Most of that was only because I didn't apply myself, but here I find that a lot easier to do, mainly because the teachers will go above and beyond to try to make sure that their students will achieve what they need, what the teachers believe that they can do, and try to help us to, what's the word I'm looking for? Aspire for greatness there. They will assist us in every way they can and give us the tools that we need in order to do so. But past that, it's up to us to do what we can to help ourselves. I know that this year has been crazy. I'm like, with COVID-19 throwing a bunch of wrenches into the educational system, but the teachers have really adapted, and so have my fellow students. I apologize if this sounds kind of strung together, but
Coming from the heart, Jeremiah. That's the most important thing.
it truly has been, the teachers truly have gone above and beyond what any of us students, or pretty much anyone, I think, would really expect of them.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
Nice job, Jeremiah. Thank you. Great job. Proud of you.
Thanks, everybody. That concludes, unless we're missing anybody, the student representatives, and to each and every one, I know from all the school committee members and Superintendent Warwick, we wish you a good health and happy holiday season. And believe you me, it will be a much better 2021 for each and every one of us. God bless you all. We'll conclude the meeting. We'll be right back on at 6:30 for our regularly scheduled meeting. Thank you so much. Great job tonight, kids.
Great job, everyone. Happy holidays.
Madam Clerk, could you please I'll call the meeting to order. Could you please call the roll?
Ms. Hurst?
Present.
Attorney Murphy?
Present.
Ms. Naylor?
Present.
Ms. Gresham?
Present.
Ms. Perez?
She was on the speak out. She was on the student speak out presentation, so she might be trying to get in.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mayor Sarno?
President, can we all please rise for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of
Of America.
to the republic for which it stands,
One nation,
Under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Focus Springfield, Josue, for having the meetings put together, and I hope everybody is safe and sound after 12 to 15 inches of snow. Sorry for my attire, just finished shoveling out. And we all, school committee members, we all want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a happy Kwanzaa, a happy Hanukkah, and to a much, much better Happy New Year of a much better 2021. I'd also like to thank our Dr. Anthony Fauci. Commissioner Helen Carlton Harris is on the line, as is Director Pat Sullivan. And I believe Bob Kirscher might be on, our industrial hygienist, when we get to our school buildings aspects. So with that, we'll now move to approval of the minutes, approve the minutes of the November 17th, December 9th, 2020 special working sessions and December 3rd, 2020 regular session. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Motion by Vice Chair Collins, is there a second, please?
Second.
Second.
By Ms. Naylor. Roll call vote is required due to a Zoom meeting. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Hurst?
Attorney Phelps, I can vote on the 2 in December, but I abstained from the November 17th because I wasn't present. How would I just say abstain or
Sure, you can just abstain from endorsing that.
abstain?
Noted by Madam Clerk.
Yes. Attorney Murphy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. Gresham?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Again, she might be trying to get on. She was on with the student representatives.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mayor Sarno?
Yes, more than sufficient vote, this matter passes. Thank you. Voting items. A is a vote to approve the Springfield School Committee Support Resolution number 1, Mass MCAS and high stakes testing, which was approved by the delegates of the Massachusetts Association of School Committees by a vote of 112 to 9 with 2 abstentions at the Mass Association School Committee annual meeting November 7th. And the resolution reads as follows: Resolution MCAS and high stakes testing submitted by the MCAS Board of Directors. Be it resolved that the MCAS rejects calls for students of 2022 who missed their 10th grade MCAS testing to be required to make it up for 2020 and 2021 school year or ever. We demand those students to be held harmless for not taking the MCAS and that their graduation requirements shall be determined by locally controlled voice, the school committee and school administration within the remaining graduation requirements of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. There's an A and a B, so I believe.
I think we'd be voting on A first alone, Mayor.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Warwick, and I know we had representatives from our school committee members too. So Superintendent Warwick, please.
Yeah, I'd like to, I know Latonia and Denise are involved in a lot of the MASC initiatives. This request on A, B, and C came from the SEA union, but it's referring, A is referring to an MASC proposal. I support it, but I'd love to hear from Denise and Latonia, who I know are very active in MASC, to get their thoughts on it.
Ms. Naylor,
Sure. Thank you, Superintendent. So I was going to actually defer to Maria because she was our delegate, our representative at the conference. I have to be.
He was trying to log in, by the way.
Okay.
He was on our speak out. Yeah.
So I do know that that was a resolution that passed by way of the MASC conference. And I do know that there are a number of school committees across the Commonwealth that have signed on to that resolution, are forwarding it to our governors and our commissioner, feeling as though because of the pandemic, it is truly very difficult to proceed with such testing during this particular time, and to not necessarily hold those students at fault because of what is going on.
And the only thing that I would add to that is there's also a push from the RIAC Council, so the Racial Imbalance Advisory Council, which reports to DESE, and I also do sit on that council. And we are advocating for not only the students from last year, but also for this year. So I do know that this is something that is really concerning for people, not just for the students, but also for the teachers, because the teachers are doing a lot to try to keep up with what the needs are currently. And for them to have that added task of having an MCAS hovering over them is just not fair to them either.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Madam Clerk, could you log in? Perez is back on.
Oh, good. Is Maria here to speak to it? Oh, good.
Ms. Perez, would you like to speak on the resolution? I know you represented us.
Maria, this is on our item A on the MASC resolution on not giving the MCAS this year for graduation for that class that would graduate in 22.
Yes, I attended I had attended the conference on November 17th, and I'm gotta excuse myself. I'm having problems coming in and out. And it was voted 112 to 9 with 2 abstentions that we, the MCAS annual meeting, on the resolution, the testing submitted by the board of director. I don't know if Chris had read it as it states. It rejects the goal of the student of 2022.
Yes,
who
I did read. Yeah, I did read it. Ms.
Yeah.
missed it. So in a nutshell, and I apologize, I'm having some connection here. It was in favor that we don't hold the testing.
Yeah, so those kids wouldn't need it or have to take it before they graduate due to the disruption caused by the pandemic. So, so Maria, you're recommending it to us as well.
Yes, I am.
Right.
As being part of the conference.
And our entire urban superintendents group at the Superintendents Association also support this item.
Any other questions or comments on this is A? We have another one B from school committee members or Superintendent Warwick. Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Hurst. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second by Ms. Naylor. Roll call vote is required. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Hurst,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Naylor,
Yes.
Ms. Gresham,
Yes.
Ms. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
Yes, more than sufficient vote. This matter passes. An attachment to this too is B. And I'll read it, then we'll turn it over to Superintendent and School Committee Woman Maria Perez. Vote to inform Governor Charlie Baker, Education Secretary Jeffrey Riley, and our state legislative delegation of the Springfield School Committee's position in favor of canceling the MCAS this year. Superintendent Warwick and Ms. Perez?
Yeah, do you want me to start it, Maria, or would you like
Yes,
to?
go ahead.
Let me take a stab at it. So this would be talking about all MCAS testing at all grades for this year. Due to the break in instruction during the pandemic, to stop instruction to give the MCAS this year doesn't make sense to most practitioners in the field. And again, this was supported by the Urban Superintendents Group. So I'd recommend approval on this. We do give the ANET, so we are doing testing that's very like MCAS, but we certainly don't need to give the MCAS this year. The time would be better spent on instruction. So this would again would be for all grades. So I'd recommend approval to this. I don't know if any other school committee members wanted to speak to it.
Thank you, Superintendent Perez.
I think, Mr. Mayor, when I attended the conference, I think there was a position that was as well taken. It was discussed. And at this point, I'm recommending to the full board that we take a vote, a yes, on this matter.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. School committee members, please, if you have any questions or comments. Ms. Gresham?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may ask. So we will do the ANET in place of the MCAS, right?
We'll do the ANET, so we'll have the diagnostic piece. So we feel that is sufficient this year, for sure, as opposed to the MCAS.
So when will we have those results? When would that happen?
We'll do the ANET 3 times this year, and we'll have 3 sets of results from those tests. So we'll have them during the year. Yeah.
All right. Would we be able to see the results of those?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
So what date would that be? Do you know what date?
We've completed the first ANET. We're pulling together the results now. So we'll be certainly glad to share them with you.
Oh, please. Thank you.
Dan,
Perez.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
Dan, Mr. Warwick, Is it fair to say that by April we will be having the second one, or when about we want to be having the second
No,
test?
I'd say we'll do the second test probably in January, February, and the third one would be before the MCAS would have been given in May, so probably April. So we'll have all 3 sets given by then. So we'll have information that would lead you to believe how students later would fare on an MCAS. You don't get the same reporting out as MCAS, but you see how each student is doing regarding the standards that you'd see on an MCAS. So it's good for the teachers to use to inform instruction and see where the kids are and how they're doing. But really, we want the focus to be on instruction because the MCAS takes a lot of time to administer.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Superintendent, could you, for the viewing audience, because we have, or at least I have, received several phone calls about the MCAS and access testing. And so I think it's important to highlight that the ANET testing is something that can be done online, whereas the MCAS and the access has to be done in person. Is that fair? Is that correct?
It is correct as it stands right now, and that is a very important distinction. We have, for the last several years, given ANET online, so it's all set to go online, and it doesn't take the extensive amount of time and preparation to give that the MCAS does. But we get good results that inform instruction for the teachers. We get the diagnostic value that you'd get from an MCAS relative to informing instruction for our teachers. So we've been giving that now the last at least 8 years. So it's a good tool instead of MCAS for now. I'm not in favor of eliminating MCAS forever, but I think for right now, this makes a lot more sense for us and we'll get good information from it. So far, what DESE has done is they've delayed the access testing now up till May 20th. As you said, we usually do that in January. So we very much appreciated that delay, but we're hoping they again cancel it. Our RELL department feels we can get information from other sources, but that takes a lot of time to administer, and our ESL teachers would be offline on instruction for a month administering the test, and we've lost too much instruction already. So we feel that makes a lot of sense. And right now, the MCAS that was going to be for that 11th grade class that was going to be in January, they've delayed till the spring, so we have time to fight this battle that we're fighting now with the governor and the commissioner. So again, I'm recommending approval on this motion.
This first question, good and valid, as we are in challenging, surreal times. This still keeps standards, and this still keeps accountability. And the point that it is online, MCAS are difficult and challenging. That's what we want for our student body. But to have it online when it hasn't been online, and the confusion that could mount and the anxiety that could mount. So this is to the viewing public and business community, standard and accountability that we're providing proper education our students are learning. So that was a good point Mr. Hirsch brought up. But I'll open it up, please, to other questions or comments. And thank you for bringing it up, Denise. Clarify that. Okay, Ms. Naylor. I'm sorry, Ms. Naylor.
I just wanted to add, Mr. Mayor, that I have children that have taken the ANET already this year. Yeah. And I want parents to just know it is intense. So it definitely is still something that's going to challenge our kids and expect them to really dig deep and really see what they know and what they're learning. So it really is a good tool for the educators to be able to know how to assist them, but it's not they don't have as much anxiety and stress as they do experience when it comes to MCAS. It's still a lengthy test, gives them a lot of time to complete it, but it is intense. So I don't want folks to think that we're not still digging, trying to make sure that we're aware of what our kids are needing and how to support them properly. So the ANET does do a good job with that.
That is a great point. It is as rigorous as MCAS. So the kids in the past that have done well on ANET do well on MCAS. And it's not a test that, like you'll see some other communities give you a false positive and then they don't do well on the MCAS. The MCAS is the hardest state test in the country. This ANET testing is rigorous, and the questions are just as rigorous as your MCAS test. That's the strength that it offers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Naylor, too. That's a great testimony.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Ms. Perez. Go ahead, Ms. Perez.
So at least this serves as a tool to know where we students are, even if they have not taken, just for a point, they have not taken the MCAS, which is great.
Yes, yeah, that it's a really good formative tool that gives us that diagnostic information.
Any other questions or comments? This is on B of the resolutions. Hearing none, is there a motion on the floor, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Hurst. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second by Ms. Perez. Due to the Zoom meeting, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Hurst,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Naylor,
Yes.
Ms. Gresham,
Yes.
Ms. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
Yes, more than sufficient vote, this matter passes. Thank you very much. C now is to vote to urge the legislature to enact a moratorium on high-stakes testing for 3 years. I will turn it over to Superintendent Warwick and Ms. Perez, who represented us at these meetings. Superintendent Warwick, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I don't feel as strongly about this one as I did the other two. I do think that to go out 3 years at this point, relative to the diagnostic value that MCAS has, is a little too much. So I think to not use it for accountability on schools for 3 years makes sense, given the gap that occurred. But I think we should start giving the MCAS again once we get back to school regularly. So that's how I feel, but I know there are many people in the state that feel they'd like to eliminate the test for 3 years. But you could give the test for diagnostic reasons and not have that heavy-handed accountability system behind it. So that's what I would recommend, but I know there are others that feel other ways on that. That's how I think many superintendents feel about it.
Thank you, Ms. Perez, school committee members?
Yes, I did not receive or saw the outcome when it comes to the state. What is the state feedback on this, Mr. Warwick?
So the commissioner hasn't even gone along with a recommendation to eliminate MCAS this year. So he wouldn't be in favor of eliminating MCAS for the next 3 years or putting a moratorium on it. And quite honestly, unless there was a waiver at the federal and the state legislative level, he wouldn't even have the authority to do that. So I would say the commissioner certainly would oppose this, most certainly.
Thank you.
Any other school committee members, Ms. Hurst?
You want to go first, Chris? Go, Chris.
Oh, Chris, I'm sorry.
I wanted to amend it. I'd like to offer amendment to change the language to say, vote to urge the legislature to enact a moratorium on the accountability associated with high stakes testing for 3 years.
On the motion, Ms. Hurst, go ahead.
So I'm not opposed to that motion because or do I need to second it in order to speak?
Yes.
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 I'm sorry, Mayor.
Someone
I'll
does.
second it so that we can have conversation.
Yeah, someone does.
Yeah, and then
So we can have dialogue, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess it's, I was thinking something similar to Chris. I mean, I guess I was looking to hear, Superintendent, more about if there's been any research that talks about how long it's going to take our students to catch up, right? We've heard so much about learning loss, and we've heard that it's going to take 3 to 5 years. And so I guess if there is no moratorium on where on the MCAS testing, what does that mean for districts like ours who are considered, I forget the new accountability term, but those who might be struggling or have their challenges? Does that mean that come next year, because our kids go back to school in September, let's say, that when DESE starts to give out accountability, that we're going to be held at the same standards, knowing that we've just gone through a year and a half of a pandemic? So that's why I feel like I'd be in favor of asking the legislature for a moratorium. I don't know if we have to ask for 3 years, but I do think we have to ask for something. And we also have to ask for some clarification as to what the accountability is going to look like Chris has just mentioned.
So the change Chris made would remove the heavy-handed accountability, which wouldn't make sense, because you're right. Given the loss of learning during the pandemic, would you be using that as an accountability measure to take action against schools, given, the disruption to student learning? So I think that makes a lot of sense. I'd like to see us give the test again, but again, not having them use it for accountability, use it for diagnostic value to see where our kids are at, in addition to the other tests we give. So that's what I think the strength of that change is. I don't think we should have the accountability measures associated with the test for the next 3 years. It just doesn't make sense due to the disruption in learning.
I just, the original I couldn't go along with that too. We're trying to get back to a sense of normalcy at the right time, the appropriate time, and to throw away testing for 3 years, I think is inappropriate, because we want to show the community and the business community also that continued accountability and standards. But I am open to what Vice Chair Collins has indicated and school committee Hurst has indicated, variation of that when it is appropriate to move back to that and continue to challenge our students. But I'd have to say, as far as knocking this off the block for 3 years, I don't think that sends a good message. We're hopeful that we're going to defeat this COVID-19, start to transition back, but then that's a transitionary period of time. So the accountability, I think that has to be looked into, that you're thrown right into the fire immediately, then you got to transition back. So on the amendment, I don't know how school committee members feel on the original agenda item there. Maybe that'll help clarify how we move forward on that and or the amendment. So I'll leave it open to the school committee members for any thoughts or comments, please.
Mayor, if I might.
Yes, Attorney Murphy.
Can I just, can I clarify what exactly Mr. Collins' amendment was?
Vice Chair Collins, could you clarify that?
Sure. I put the words in after moratorium on the accountability connected with the high stakes testing. The point that Ms. Hurst brought up was one point. The other point that I was concerned with is 10th graders not graduating by having to take this test. I'm not saying they shouldn't take it. Quite honestly, I believe if MCAS was given this year, or if it's given next year, my own belief is our teachers did such a great job at remote education that we might actually score much higher than people would think we would, and would close the gap. I don't want to see 10th graders not graduate by having the draconian accountability that's associated with this test after having lost a significant amount of education.
Would this take out the 3 years, Chris?
I left the 3-year in there, but only for accountability.
It would take out the heavy-handed accountability piece of it, but not the test as a diagnostic tool. So we can assess how the kids in schools are
accountability
doing.
associated with the test.
So would that, I'm saying to Attorney Murphy, that would that mean whether we're back in taking the test within a year's time, or let's say 2 years' time?
Yeah, that's what.
Barbara, that's,
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Why 3 years? Does it have to be 3 years? Could it be less than that?
That was what was proposed by the SEA and the MTA, but we could do whatever you folks wanted to do, because this is just saying the school committee opinion on it. The SEA and MTA's opinion is there should be a moratorium on all the testing for 3 years. I agree that that's a hard sell to the public. I think the accountability piece for 3 years makes a lot of sense, because I don't think anyone should be held accountable to it as a learning loss for now. That's how whereas most superintendents are leading.
Barbara, were you looking like for 1 year or 2 year on it?
Yeah, it's like maybe a 2.
Okay, Ms. Hurst, yeah, I know you had your hand up too.
When would the clock start? So right now, all that's happened has been that it's been delayed, correct?
Correct.
Access have been delayed.
Right.
Would this be year one?
The way I read it, in the way they intended it, this would be year 1.
2021.
We asked that they not give it this year.
We asked that they not give it this year, but we're not.
We asked that they not give it this year.
Right.
But they haven't said.
They haven't said.
Conceded to that.
They definitely have not.
So then I think that at the very least, I definitely agree with the 3-year moratorium on accountability. But I think that if this is year 1, then we have to at least ask for a moratorium for year 1 and potentially year 2. Like, I understand 3 years is too far out, but year 1 absolutely makes a ton of sense to me, because
difference.
We don't know what's going to happen, right? We don't know. There's still so much uncertainty.
Right. If I could,
Mr. Mayor?
the reason I left the 3 years in is I kind of believe that at the end of it all, with all the pressure that DESE's getting, they may cancel this year. And then when we get back to school next year, that becomes the baseline. And then 2 years from now, you start to get a measure. So you end up with a new baseline, I think. That's why I left the 3. I'm open to if people want to reduce it down to 2, I'm fine with that. I left it in there, but as long as we don't have accountability while we're creating that new, but it has tremendous diagnostic uses. So I don't think I want to see them not give the test.
I'll go to Ms. Perez, and then Ms. Naylor has her hand up too. Ms. Perez, Maria.
And, if I were to vote, I would vote on the 2 years, because based on the fact, and that's why I asked, what's the state discussion at this point in this any? But at least they start to acknowledge that we have a frame time. I won't see it extended through the 3 years at this point, because they don't even have had a discussion. But at least 2 years is satisfactory if this is year 1. That's my statement right now.
Would that be a friendly amendment to Vice Chair Collins's, that accountability key word, 2 years transition?
I would accept that. And if that's the will of the body, I would certainly accept that as an friendly amendment, and the seconder would have to accept as well.
If I may ask a question, Ms. Naylor, I think, was next.
Naylor was next, yes, Ms. Naylor, sorry.
So my question is regarding the Abigail Scholarship that's associated with the MCAS. So if we vote to get rid of the MCAS, then now we lose a substantial number of students. And I think in some of our schools, almost half of our seniors are eligible for this scholarship just because of taking the MCAS. So my concern is if we decide to now not have MCAS at all, then we may lose access to this scholarship for our students. Is that something that's true? Is there adjustments to that?
Superintendent Warwick, can you clarify that?
Well, the way I'd understand that is if you're still taking the test after this year, you'd still have the kids qualify for Abigail and John Adams scholarships. You just wouldn't have the accountability against buildings because the scores have declined.
So
So
that's,
if you get rid of the accountability, but still give the test the next 2 years, you'd still keep the scholarship opportunity.
that's important because I think in some of
There
our
is.
schools, almost 100% of the kids have received that scholarship. So I wouldn't want to take that opportunity away from them.
Right.
What was it? Dr. Johnson, Yolanda Johnson was on. Dr. Johnson, could you clarify that? Because I believe our percentage is well over 80%. Ms. Naylor brings up a good point. If we take the exam, we amend this 2 years accountability, that gets us in the doorway to get the scholarships.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I did reach out to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education regarding this matter, and they have yet to make any decisions around, the implications of MCAS. So it's very consistent with what Superintendent Warwick just stated. And we do agree that the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship definitely is a pathway to our students attending our local universities. UMass is now within our top 8 colleges that our students are attending, which is an increase due to that scholarship.
We would not jeopardize if on an amended version, again, the school committee has it, if we put accountability 2 years, not a more to, in your opinion, we wouldn't jeopardize our students, would we at all?
I would definitely need to ask Paul Foster for more guidance on that, but the state definitely has said that they have not made any decisions because they're still in limbo. I think that if we make that decision, there may be what I would suggest that we would advocate for as an alternative pathway for students to be able to be eligible for that. For example, the College Board, given this pandemic, the College Board has provided alternate ways for students to be considered a National Merit Qualifying Scholarship recipient. So that may be something that we may want to advocate for on behalf of our students, depending on the outcome of this decision. I mean, I still think that it's room for advocacy for our kids to be considered.
Mr. Foss, stats is on. Could you clarify? Because we don't want to bite our nose off despite our face here, and I don't want to hurt our kids at all either.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know. I'm not sure I have more to offer than what Dr. Johnson just said. I mean, I do think we're in reasonably okay territory. I mean, to be honest, because this would affect every district in the state. And so if they were to put a moratorium on MCAS, they would have to come up with an alternative way to award Adams scholarships. Now, the methodology could affect which kids get it for sure, but the good news is the way it works now is it's set at a percentage of each district's seniors. And so as long as any alternative method awarded the scholarship to a fixed percentage of each school district's seniors, then we would be still protecting our students' interests.
Thank you, Paul. Ms. Hurst?
I was just going to say that for the piece of the delegate assembly that I was able to attend, Dr. Johnson and Paul are correct in that the state hasn't decided on what metrics they're going to use. So it would seem to me that if other districts went or voted in favor of a moratorium, that the state would have to make sure that they had other metrics to use to measure for that scholarship. So I think that no matter what, they're going to have to figure out how to award it.
I agree with Denise on that. That makes a lot of sense. They haven't come up with any of that yet because they haven't even agreed to put any kind of moratorium on. And this only happens statewide through all the pressure. We can't opt ourselves out. This is only, to encourage people to take a look at this statewide and work it through. So I think that would give us some protection.
Ms. Naylor?
And one thing I would say, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Superintendent, is because some some places are advocating for folks that if there is a requirement for MCAS to ask families to opt out. And I think it's important that families realize that if you opt out, you could risk your child not having access to this scholarship, which could be a full tuition in some cases. So it's really important that people have all the information, and not just the information that folks want to give you to help you go along with their agenda.
That was a great point. According to the law right now, they have to take it to graduate. So I would never encourage families to have their child opt out, because then you take a chance that they can't even get a high school diploma or the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship. So that we would work with our families to make sure we educate them not to go that route. That's not a prudent route to go at all.
So maybe it's a section of our students to give them the accessibility to these scholarships. And with Ms. Gresham and Ms. Perez and Vice Chair Collins, maybe we can meld something together, the 2-year, soften it, accountability, and get rid of it, because I just don't want, I don't think they would do it, but turn around and say, hey, you voted to take your kids off the playing field here.
But
we don't want.
Yeah, we can't vote to take our kids off the playing field. We're just sending a resolution in to encourage them to do something statewide. So, it really would be, if there's enough force behind it from a lot of communities, maybe the legislature and the governor and the commissioner would take action. That's how I view it. But,
building things, and as far as being very methodical about it, and there has been pressure put on. So I'm not saying that the state would do that. I just want to make sure we clarify that our kids can qualify for those. So Vice Chair Collins has an amendment. I think Ms. Perez is a friendly amendment. Maybe we could meld something together. Mr. Collins, you're muted. Attorney Phelps,
I saw Attorney Phelps trying to interject, and I'm guessing that what she was going to say, that going from 3 to 2 years is a significant change. And so is that where we're going to go, Attorney?
Right. Yeah, you'd need a motion to go to 2 years. But I'm even wondering if there would be language such as a vote to urge the legislature to hold hearings to consider the ramifications of, a moratorium on MCAS, because of the things that you've just brought up, the items you've brought up, the effect on scholarships, et cetera. I think the legislature, before it does anything, is going to have to think through all of that, and that would be done through hearings. So just a thought, if that meets some of the school committee members' concerns.
But they would have, at that time,
I believe that legislature would always hold hearings. I think. And at 3 years, changing from 3 to 2 could be considered a significant change. So with the seconder's permission, I would withdraw the motion and instead put forth a motion that says to urge the legislature to enact a moratorium on accountability associated with high stakes testing for 2 years.
Is there a second to that?
But does that remove the moratorium on the 2 years? Or don't we, wasn't the initial motion to have a moratorium on the testing?
No, it was.
That's what they asked us to do.
That's what they asked us to do. Chris was the accountability piece, not the testing. So we're still giving the testing.
But don't we want at least a moratorium on this year?
We do. We voted for that already.
I'm sorry, Mary. If I made for one moment, I thought, I'm a little confused. So I thought we already voted that this year would be totally not for our children to take MCAS. Right? Which would be unfair to our kids, in my view, and kids throughout the Commonwealth.
Yes.
But then, just so I'm clear, if we're doing a 2 year, if we're going to vote to recommend a 2 year, that would be this year and then next 2022.
It could be next year and the year after if they decide not to test this year, that we would be asking for a moratorium on accountability. So if they, let's say the states comes back, they feel so much pressure that they say, okay, we're not going to give it this year. The 2 years would be no accountability for next school year and the school year after that.
You could say for a period of 2 years, of 2 years of testing, something like that, for the next 2 years of testing. So that leaves you the room, if this year doesn't count, because they're not going to test anyway, when that decision is made, then it's for the 2 years following this year.
So in your opinion, Attorney Phelps, if the way it was worded was to a moratorium on the accountability associated with the high stakes testing, can't seem to put those two words together, that would do what you're saying, right? Because if there isn't a test, there's no accountability to be.
That's right. Yep.
But we're still taking the test, so that way we're not closing the door and saying, hey, we took the test. It's a real
You'd have the test for diagnostic purposes for those 2 years, and you'd have them for the John and Abigail Adams scholarships for those 2 years. You would just not have the heavy-handed accountability that's been the way that DESE has it.
Patty McCarthy, you must be having fun with this amendment. You
want me to read it again, Patty?
5,000 times. Well, for school committee members, is that, I think it melds things, Barb and Maria and Latoni, the 2 year, is everybody good on that, or?
I don't think there's been a second on that, Mayor.
Okay, why don't you read, Chris, could you just read?
I move that we vote to urge the legislature to enact a 2-year moratorium on the accountability associated with the high stakes testing for 2 years.
Is there a second on that?
I think I'll second that.
I'll second it.
It is very confusing.
Well, yes, it is. Yeah, we all can okay, so I need to laugh today too. Ms. Hurst has seconded it, and I think we got everything in that we wanted. Barbara's shaking her head, so good.
Okay, good.
Motion by Vice Chair Collins, which has been recrafted, seconded by Ms. Hurst. Roll call vote is required. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Hurst?
Yes.
Attorney Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Naylor?
Yes.
Ms. Gresham?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mayor Sarno?
Yes. More than enough votes. This motion, this passes.
Mayor, you have to bang your gavel to make it official.
How's that? Hard head I have. How's that? I'm good at it. So I don't have Chris Collins' 1950, that's his dad's old vice chair thing there. So a more than sufficient vote, this matter passed. Thank you, everybody, for working this out. I think we got everything that we needed.
In it.
Say, hey, well,
I think it does.
Want to hurt our kids either. So
right.
The superintendent, you're right. We softened it too, because I think if we 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
May I comment? So in addition to sending it, I know we've sent these letters before to our legislature, to the legislators, or to the legislature, excuse me, but we should also really send them to our local delegation.
Oh, yes.
Specifically.
Anything.
We will. We've always done that. When you've done these, we always send them to our local delegation.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you very much, everybody. It's a good discussion to get the right message sent. D now is to vote to approve the expenditure of $20,000 from the Nellie Mae Education Foundation for the FY21 educators for Black Lives Rapid Response Grant. Superintendent Ward, please.
As vote is to accept the grant, I have Melissa and Matt Grimes from HR that I think could give us good background on the grant. Matt or Melissa, do you want to speak to it?
Attorney Shea, please.
Sure. So this goes towards our increasing the diversity of our educators in Springfield Public Schools. And part of our Grow Your Own initiative, we presented the data to you at the last meeting why Grow Your Own is so important for the Springfield Public Schools. And this goes towards the paraprofessional pipeline part of our Grow Your Own educator. And it's money that goes towards the in-district leadership program development for our paraprofessionals to become educators. And specifically, it's the Nellie Mae grant that was targeted towards Black educators. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt Grimes, who was instrumental in helping us attain this, to add further detail.
Thank you, Attorney Chief. Mr. Grimes, Matt, how you doing?
Yes, good evening. I'm doing well. And thank you, Melissa. So yes, this is one of the many programs and strategies as part of our recruitment and retention initiatives to diversify the educator workforce. This particular grant opportunity will allow us to create a pilot in-district program specifically for Black and African-American professionals who are interested in becoming teachers. We will use the funds to help support their leadership as we guide and coach them through licensure process. So this will take place virtually over the course of several months, whereas the paraprofessionals will work with different speakers and folks in the district to really understand the ins and outs and the granular details of what it means to become a teacher. We will do sessions on navigating the complexity of licensure and DESE, everything from strategic classroom management. What does it mean to educate our students in Springfield? All in an attempt to motivate them to make the transition from paraprofessional to educator, as we know that pool continues to grow.
Strengthen that farm. That's good. Very good.
Oh, and if I could add, this is also in collaboration with the paraprofessional union, who is assisting us with this.
Yeah, Kathy's been great on this, like every other initiative.
Yes. Gosh, Kathy Metzeron, she does a great job. And we also were connected up, I know, with Dr. Johnson, a number of our higher education institutions, whether Westfield State or SC, Springfield College, on these specific things for the paras too. I could be missing an institution. My apologies on that. So that's very good. Questions or comments?
Mayor, if I could just add something, this went through the Budget and Finance Subcommittee, so I know, I don't know if Chair Collins wanted.
Let me go to Ms. Perez, wanted to.
Yes.
And then I'll go to Vice Chair Collins.
Mr. Mayor, back in March of last year, when we had the advisory community group that met for the plan, this was one of the highest ones that came in from that group, advice from the group, the advisory group for the paraprofessional Grow Your Own. So we moving forward, and I'm glad to hear that we are able to acquire some money. This is a start. It's a small amount, but it's a start. And then the discussion was that the intel was so hard so how to grow our own, and I'm pleased to hear that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You worked hard on that subcommittee there, staff demographics, Ms. Perez. So thank you very much for that. Vice Chair Collins, I don't know if anything to add on the budget finance.
It got unanimous support from the Budget and Finance Committee, so I would move that we approve item D.
There's a motion on the floor by Vice Chair Collins. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second by Ms. Perez. Roll call vote is required. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Hurst?
Yes.
Attorney Murphy?
You're muted, Murphy.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Ms. Naylor?
Yes.
Ms. Gresham?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mayor Sarno?
Yes, more than sufficient vote. This matter passes. Thank you very much. E is the vote to approve the proposed school reopening plan. And again, I want to thank Commissioner Helen Carlton Harris. I always say my Dr. Anthony Fauci, Director of Facilities and Parks, Pat Sullivan. We worked hand in hand. I know Bob Kirshner's on, the industrial hygienist professional we brought on for O'Reilly, Talbot, and Oaken. to make sure we're being very methodical on public health. And our goal is the same as everybody else, to get our kids and teachers administration back there as soon as it is publicly health-wise safe and sound. And we're doing a lot of investment in fiscal plans. So let me turn it over to Superintendent Ward, please. And we had just had the town hall meeting too.
Thank you, Mayor. I asked Paul Foster if he could just present some information now from the town hall meeting to give us some background of how the responses went and everything to help frame the discussion. So if you don't mind, Paul would present that information.
Jump in, Vice Chair. I saw your box lit up. Okay.
I'll listen to Paul first.
Okay, I'm sorry. Stats, you're on.
Yep, I'm going to share my screen. Actually, I think Azelle is going to join me and actually walk you through some of this data.
I was going to walk it through. And Azelle and Paul Foster did such a great job the other night helping us, as everyone else did on the town hall.
Azelle, congrats to Trey, too, on his D1 commitment.
All right. Azelle, I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. D1, baby. Way to go.
Very excited. Okay, and so now I will walk you through some data from our town hall earlier this week. We had more than 5,000 people who turned in to view the town hall, 5,037. And of course, you cannot capture the number of people who were viewing live via their television set, so we know it was more than that. Of that, nearly 924 of them, which is 18%, tuned into the multilingual channels that we had provided, our non-English streams on YouTube. As you know, the participants were able to submit their questions and comments live during the event. We received 740 text messages and 180 emails. These include individual messages, not individual participants, and some participants did send multiple messages. 25 families participated in a follow-up session that our liaisons, our family liaisons, provided in Arabic, Nepali, and Vietnamese. So we had 25 families participate in additional question and answer sessions the December 16th, the day after our town hall. Here, you will see what the opinions that were expressed for remote versus hybrid learning and how they looked, broken down by the comments, by role, and by their expression of their opinion. You can see that for students, we're looking at a higher preference. The green represents the staying remote. Parents, very much so, more so, staying remote. Staff, as you can see, 81%. And people who did not identify themselves, 73%. It's important to note that the role is based on self-identification, and so that the participants identified themselves as either parents or staff. And if they were a parent and a staff, they're represented twice. Their opinion is represented twice here. And we did include data from that second evening of question and answer sessions here in this slide. We went through and tried to identify recurring themes that were mentioned in comments. And if we noticed that 4 or more participants were expressing the same theme, you will see it represented here. And so some of the most prominent themes that came up were concern about safety procedures being followed and the accountability for staff and students when school resumes in person for following those safety procedures. Questions around the actual cleaning protocols in the building, and several questions around the hybrid model with Wednesdays. Why not include Wednesdays as a closed day for school so that the buildings could be deep cleaned on Wednesdays? Stated concerns about how teachers would manage in-person and hybrid, in-person and remote teaching at the same time. Questions around testing and how often would students and staff be tested for COVID, and how might that happen? Would that happen? Not directly related to going back in person versus remaining remote, but a lot of concern around screen time that students are currently experiencing with remote education, and a feeling that it's too much and there needs to be a reduction in screen time. Also some concern around teachers managing both. If they are teachers and parents, how do you manage both of those successfully, both of those roles? Again, the current remote situation, a feeling of too many assignments for students, too much work being given to students currently during remote. Again, about moving to in-person learning, a lot of concerns expressed around PPEs and what would be provided. And also within that, it was really broken down to the alternative school staff had a lot of questions around hands-on PPE requirements and what would be provided for their hands-on needs. Some questions around the flu shot requirement. What would happen if the student is not, it does not get the flu shot? And a couple of comments, few comments as you can see, around concerns not being able to procure uniforms for the school year. Should we return back in person? And specific to Putnam, a need for Putnam vocational classes to resume to in-person. There was quite a few inquiries about the protocols that would be put in place for safety and health. Should we go back to school? What are the specific protocols that would be implemented throughout the day to protect students and staff?
So that gives folks a good summary of the feedback and where people came down during the town hall. And I thank the school committee for running 2 town hall meetings now to get that feedback, to see where the public is before they make these important decisions. So,
Superintendent, is it possible that Commissioner Helen Carlton Harris or Director Sullivan, Patrick Sullivan, if they might want to chime in just with a few words on briefly on, we did the town hall and the reason why we might take a vote one way or the other, what we're doing on public health and what we're doing on physical.
I think that's a great idea.
So with the indulgence of the school committee, I don't know, Helen, if you want to go first, and then Pat, public health, and then fiscal plan. I know Bob's on either too, the industrial hygienist.
Well, thank you for the opportunity and thank you for inviting me to the town hall. I really am here just to answer questions. I think that we attempted to give a public health overview, letting the school committee and the public know where we were as far as the data is concerned. I wanted individuals to understand that the reason we're having these conversations is because we are in the throes of a global pandemic, and going remote, hybrid, or in person, all of that is considered based on the data that we have in our city. And I gave a few I gave some information about the data and where we were the past 3 weeks. I talked a little bit about some of the protocols that we have put in place, the outreach that we've done, and the numbers. And I think we tried to show that the numbers were at a place that's very, very concerning. I really wanted us to understand that 22.8 of the individuals who had positive cases over the last week were individuals under the age of 20. Every zip code in our city is impacted, but everything that we recommend from public health is done with the safety of students in mind. There's no information that we have given that is counterproductive to safety and public health protocols. Again, I am here just to answer questions. I do have the data. I could go over it again. It's probably not necessary. I believe all school committee individuals were on that call, but if you would like specifics around the data, I'm happy to answer that question. And again, I want to thank the school committee staff. I've worked closely with the assistant superintendent, the superintendent, Jeannie Clancy, Mr. Early, Mayor Sarno, of course. They've been really wonderful in working with me and our public health department. We have a team that has worked diligently to put forth some information that I hope is helpful to your decision-making process. This is a difficult decision, and I know as in the past, you will make a decision based on the health and welfare of the teachers and the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carlton Harris. Director Sullivan, do you want to say on the massive investment we're making on physical plant? Then I'll open it up. Obviously, the school committee members, they have specific questions for Commissioner Helen Carlton Harris and Director Sullivan. Patrick, please.
Yes, like Helen, I'm here to answer any questions, but we have received as of this week all of the technology as it relates to the carrier units. The iWave units are now in our warehouse. We have finished our cross-training of all the tradesmen to install this technology into our buildings. It will take a couple of months to install these systems. We are completing the electrical upgrades with Eversource, the engineering for those upgrades, so that will be taken carried forward through January as well. So we're all working very hard and diligently to get this technology. And again, I just applaud the mayor, the superintendent, and the entire school committee for allowing us to share this information when we brought it to you in September and giving us the time to, I think we've made the right decision, and we continue to make the right decision to try to create a very safe environment for everyone to work and learn in.
Thank you, Director Sullivan. I'll open it up now, please, to school committee members that might have some questions or comments. Vice Chair Collins? You're mute, Chris. You're mute.
Thank you. Thank you. The agenda item is very vague, so I'm going to offer a motion to focus our discussion that Springfield schools remain in full remote learning until all of the upgrades are made to the ventilation systems, at which time we will revisit this decision.
And also based on the public health numbers too, on that. But on the motion or discussion, Ms. Naylor?
I have a question. I agree, but I want to amend even what he said. So how would that work, Mindy? Attorney Phelps.
Mindy, you're mute.
So, Ms. Naylor, you would make a motion. First of all, I don't think Mr. Collins's motion was seconded.
Okay.
I did not hear a second. Is that correct?
Right, because I wasn't sure if I should second it and then make my recommendation.
If there is no second to Mr. Collins's motion, then you can go ahead. It basically dies. Then you can go ahead and make a motion.
Okay.
Oh, I got a question. Are we?
Go ahead, Barbara.
We're discussing this, correct?
Yes. I'm just trying to frame the discussion. We should discuss a motion.
On the motion, we're just a discussion, which could be a friendly amendment, on it, but on the, yeah.
But I just don't want to rush into anything, Chris.
That was not my intent, Barb. I was making the motion so it would open up the discussion and focus the discussion. Because the agenda item is very vague. If you read it, it could mean almost anything. Yeah. So I made the motion only with the intent of focusing our discussion. It didn't have a second, so I'll just stop. So if it doesn't have a second, it doesn't have a second.
May I speak? I'm sorry.
We're going to be prepping ourselves, methodical and thorough on public health first, and 1A, physical plant. So we haven't sat on our hands. We moved forward, invested millions of dollars on the ventilation systems in our schools. brought in professionals also to deal with our specialists and professionals. So the two-prong on public health and preparing for a proper transition when the time is right. Attorney Murphy, I'm sorry.
No, thank you, Mayor.
Peter, can I ask what I was going to ask first?
Yes, please.
I think it's important because I think we need to understand this piece that I want to add, and that is, I personally don't feel that we need to make a general vote. I think that Putnam needs to be a separate vote because Putnam is a separate situation. We have kids in vocational training that need vocational certification hours, and they have to be in person to get those certification hours. I think that's a different conversation than a generalized remote learning conversation. So my amendment was actually going to be to request that we could separate the vote into twofold, where we could vote for Putnam on Putnam's situation separately from the rest of the district.
Oh. Superintendent Ward, can we clear? I know we had, because we're looking at the SPED students, Putnam, that came up discussions before about the hands-on vocational technical training on that. And I saw Attorney Phelps was nodding her head, it was okay. So let me go to Ms. Hurst and Superintendent Ward, then can you clarify after on that? Ms. Hurst, please.
I know that Peter was supposed to go after.
I know.
If that you guys always forget about
Hollywood Squares here.
No.
The show.
Please go, Ms. Hurst. I'm good. I have a couple things to say, but
No. I want you to go because I know that you were second. It's okay. Go
sorry,
ahead.
Murph.
Well,
no,
so
it's okay.
I think that globally we don't know what's going to happen. We're in the midst of a upsurge in the pandemic. I do agree with Ms. Naylor about our vocational students and also our special needs students, our homeless kids. I mean, I think that we should try to get back to virtual, to outside of virtual learning, to hybrid or to in person. But I don't think now is the time that we can make that decision. The numbers are terrible. So I just think, can't we just wait 30 days or so and assess where we are at that point? I mean, I'm prepared to take a vote, but I think that we need more information, and we're in a very fluid situation with respect to where Corona is right now in the holidays. We just had Thanksgiving. We're going to have, holidays. People are going to have gatherings. We're probably going to see a spike. The vaccine is not going to be distributed, to most of us. So, I mean, I'm just wondering if it's possible. Like, I don't really feel comfortable, Chris, tying the motion to the the ventilation systems, because we do have many facilities that are going to be that would work to bring kids back if the time was right and if it was safe. So I would just say a short delay in this is not the end of the world, to give us time to look at the data and to see how it looks, after the holidays. I mean, nobody wants to go back now, it seems to me.
Is this because we're going into another marking period to give some type of clarification for transitional purposes for students and teachers?
We told people we would make a decision on the second marking period. So we owe that to people, I believe.
Ms. Hurst?
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I do believe that we do need to take a vote with respect to the second marking period. I do agree, Chris, that we owe that to people. And I actually would like to have some concrete dates about the second marking period, when that ends, because I know we're in that right now, and when the third marking period ends. However,
Can I give you that, Denise? Would you want that now?
Yes.
Sure.
So,
but I just don't want to get skipped over again. So that's why I was going to rush.
Oh, no, I was just going to give you the dates if you want them. I wasn't going to take the floor at all.
No, go ahead.
So the second marking period would end January 30th. third marking period would end April 8th.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, what I was going to say is that before we jumped into a motion, we haven't had an opportunity to ask our own questions and get some clarification from what had occurred in the town hall and to the information that was just presented by Paul and Azelle. So I don't want to tie anything to a motion either until we're able to sort of have a dialogue about the information that we saw, 2 nights ago or a night and a half ago, and the information that was just presented to us. I think that if we're able to have that conversation, then we can make a fully informed decision as to what might be the most appropriate motion and how do we tie this back. But I do agree with Chris that at the very end of this, we do have to have a vote as to what we are going to do about the second marking period, because there are families and teachers who are waiting to hear about what they should be planning for.
There's 2 things. I mean, the numbers, obviously, with Mr. Hellicourt and Harris, we're in a surge, we're in a spike right now. And I believe Director Sullivan indicated, although a report came at buildings, we built a lot of new buildings, rehab buildings. I think Pat and Mr. Sullivan's on said, we probably won't be ready with everything, the I-waves, the carrier systems, the 4 older schools we have, which are new ones are being built, Brightwood, Lincoln, DeBerry, Homer, until March, if I'm correct on that.
That is correct. That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
So, I mean, you can ask some questions now, and then maybe we can modify the.
There is no motion. It didn't get a second.
Okay. So, but we do need to give a concrete message to the students and the teachers and administration, staff, and how we're going to proceed in the immediate future. So, but out for questions. Ms. Gresham?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to Mr. Sullivan, how will they be disinfecting the classrooms or the building?
Bob O'Kahey and Pat Roach's department handles the custodial part of it, and they do have a plan in place to do daily disinfecting of the classrooms.
Okay, so I think we need to know that. We need to know how often is it, how many custodians will be in the building on a daily basis, and how are they going to clean that? What are they using to sanitize it?
Mr. Rowe?
Ms. Gresham, we have all the appropriate cleaners. We're following all the CDC guidelines. We didn't reduce any custodial staff even during this pandemic so that we could be prepared to open. We've purchased these new cleaning guns that take the special chemicals so that we can very quickly sanitize classrooms. The custodians will be able to go into a room and spray this fast-setting chemical that'll land on the desks and the chairs and the floors, and we'll disinfect them. And we have all of our protocols in place, and we feel really good about it. The bathrooms will be done multiple times a day. Every custodian will have our cleaning protocols. We created special COVID protocols, and we'll have them. Every school is different, so there's no standard protocol for the district, but we have each individual school's cleaning protocols that are posted in the buildings in the main office, and the principals can always follow up. It says what custodian should be doing what things each day. If for some reason a custodian's out, we have overtime planned in order to be able to cover their lost hours.
So you will have enough manpower to do this?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right.
If I could just interject something, I answered Denise's question incorrectly. I said the second quarter closes January 30th. It's actually January 28th.
28th, okay.
January 28th. Sorry about that, Denise.
He always said it would be difficult when we had to close when this pandemic started back in March 14th, I believe. But we always said that it was going to be even twice as hard as we reopen, how we properly reopen. So,
Mr. Mayor, I just want to voice support for what Mrs. Naylor said, that we should set a priority of Putnam to get the I-waves and the MERV and everything that needs to be put in so that we can consider at least letting the students in to complete their hands-on shop, or else we run the danger of them not being able to get certified the way they're supposed to in those programs. So I agree with Latonia that we should set a priority there. And if they happen to be ready before everybody else, then I think we should take a look at doing something like that.
Director Sullivan, where do we stand with Putnam Vocational Technical Academy? That's a beautiful school too, beautiful school.
Yeah, actually, Pat Roach and the superintendent had reached out to me today to have all the high schools prioritize for testing and everything. So we're going to be having a phone call with Pat Roach tomorrow morning at 10 to discuss that. And I don't see an issue in doing that.
There are other local high schools that are vocational that are hybrid. And so I think we could definitely look at how they're doing, how their numbers are. I do agree with Attorney Murphy that we shouldn't be going back tomorrow or today, right? But I do believe that looking at what some other vocational schools locally and across the district are doing, across the country, Commonwealth, are doing, because I think that'll help us with making sure that we have, in fact, echo some of the things that they're doing that have been effective, and then also supplement in the areas where we see that maybe they didn't do what they were supposed to do. But I absolutely am concerned about any of our kids graduating and not able to work because they didn't get their certification. So I agree with Mr. Collins 100%.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, Ms. Hirsch was next, and then Ms. Perez.
No, because Ms. Perez has been waiting, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, very calmly, yes. I hear what my colleague, Ms. Naylor, is saying. Right now, this is dearest to my heart because I just lost someone that was very close to me. I think that I'm basing my decision tonight on the surge, also on the ventilation. I just don't want to rush things, and I've been hearing from my constituents. I just don't want to have rush things with opening. I know that this is another matter that we need to discuss separately from tonight's agenda. But I going according to what my colleague Mr. Murphy said, the holidays are coming, the gatherings are gonna happen. And I feel very concerned, and I probably would like to see after the holidays if we could start doing some measurements. But I don't think, from my part, I don't feel safe with voting that we return as soon as we can. We need to have this discussion about Putnam. And I think that's separate about what's going on right now with the search in the city. I have seen other cities that had tried to do the hybrid, and they have gone back to teaching remotely. And that's my concern at this point right now.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Ms. Hurst?
So, Mr. Mayor and Superintendent, it sounds like, and I might be just speculating based on some of the comments that we've heard from the other school committee members as to where we stand, as well as the science that was provided to us by Commissioner and the ventilation system by Mr. Sullivan. I too am prepared to take a vote. I think that my request is really, can we make sure that when we come back or when we reconvene well in advance of the January 28th date that we're going to go to third marking period, that we have enough time to have the conversations that need to be had, to ask the questions that need to be asked? Because for me, I feel like I could barrage you right now with 20 questions that I had from that town hall, but the reality is that it's not safe. And just based on the stats that Zell and Paul provided to us, I wouldn't feel comfortable voting in favor for us to return. But what I do think is important is that, we want to know about personnel levels, like what's that going to look like? I know I personally am interested in hearing what is going to happen if we go hybrid and there is, a case or two or three. What's going to be the level of cases that are needed to determine that school might have to go remote? We see that in the news a lot, right? We see that this particular district is now remote and they're remote for 2 weeks. So I guess I just feel like we need to we need to have a lot of details in order to figure out how to move forward, and in particular with some of the populations that you stated in that plan on Tuesday night. So I'd like to be able to see that plan too before it goes public, so that we can provide some feedback and then give it to the public and hear their feedback. I want us to be able to critique it and be able to go back and forth with it as much as possible, and not feel so rushed, like have a town hall, have a day, and then have to hurry up and make a vote.
Mr.
I think
Mayor?
that's a great point. And we do have a working session on January 14th. So that would give us time to really have an extensive dialogue about where we're at. So one thing we might consider is that it's unrealistic to think we could return before January 28th due to the surge, due to the ventilation needs. We have the working session to go into some detail if you wanted to do that on January 14th about what we might do. And we're also going to still be following the rates very closely with Helen and the ventilation improvements with Pat, and then see if there's some targeted populations we could start bringing back if the rates start to go in a favorable direction, and we could move forward with that. But given the surge in the rates right now, I don't think we'd be able to put anything together that we could get any agreement with the union on to bring anyone back at this juncture.
Well, I also think that the personnel levels are also important too, right? Because I
huge
need for our vocational schools to go back.
They're huge.
That's one of the schools that doesn't have the personnel. So
We would. I think if we tried to go back too soon before the rates fall, and with this surge, and before all the ventilation work is done, I think you'd find a lot of teachers and paras opting out, and we would have difficulty staffing the hybrid, which has been a problem in some schools. I absolutely agree we should phase in an opening, and that the Vokes should be in that first group, the Vokes 10 to 12, where they need the hours. And some other small selected groups could be in that first group. I just don't think we're ready for that right now. But I do think we have a January 14th meeting where we could have an extensive working session to certainly discuss that and get feedback from the school committee on what you'd like to see in a plan. And we could also get an update from Helen and Pat at that time on the status of where we're at and what schools could be ready. And we could look at the surge rates at that time. But I think even if we did that, we wouldn't be able to return anyone before January 28th. Anyway, there'd be no way we'd have the negotiations finished, all the complicated items that we were talking about.
Ms. Perez?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I agree with my colleague Hurst is saying. Another concern that I have, and I think it should be part of the working session, and emergency preparedness as part of that discussion. So I would like to see a plan, because I know they are gonna be coming back, but I've seen other schools fail because of not having an emergency preparedness plan. What if, So I think in that session, we should be including a discussion of an emergency preparedness as well. So that's my recommendation at this point. Also discussing our emergency preparedness if we have to return back to remotely as part of the conversation in that working session.
Thank you, Ms. Gresham. Ms. Gresham, I know Ms. Gresham wanted to.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Also, I think we need to consider having a checklist, a daily checklist of people coming in the building, asking questions, if they've had a fever within the last 24 hours, if they've came in contact with anyone that's tested positive. It's just a whole lot of stuff that we need to put in place before we even think about how we're going to reopen.
We do that at City Hall now and municipal buildings, that we have a structured
yes
access temperature takes. No one can walk in without any type of prior information or.
And even if there's anyone in the household that have symptoms within the 24-hour period, all of that has to be taken under consideration.
Director Sullivan and Mr. Colton have done a great job, and we've not technically we've never shut down the municipal buildings, but again, it's a structured entrance to it.
Right.
Are we looking at? Do we have to? I know Ms. Hurst brought up a good point. This so we could send clarification. Are we looking to table this, or we're going to send a message for the near future? We're staying remote for the near future.
Could I just, if I may, for a moment? I mean, I think we should table the matter or continue the vote. We do have if necessary, we have an organizational meeting. I think it's the first Wednesday of January, and then we have January 14th. We can take up, once we see the data from
the holiday
and Thanksgiving and the holidays, we'll have, I think, more information. But also just one question, if possible. I mean, Putnam is obviously our newest school, I think, or one of our newest schools. I mean, their ventilation system.
They have a new ventilation system. You're right, but we want to put the I waves in, Pete.
Ashtray standard.
We want to put the I waves in so that they'll filter the air even better than the HVAC system. So we'd want to get the I waves in Putnam, I believe, before we return, or I would.
Director Sullivan, can you clarify that, Patrick?
Yeah, so that is correct. We want to put the I waves into all of those buildings, and that will just be one more step in improving the quality of the air and actually catching any viruses or bacteria that might be in the air and getting them trapped into the filtration system. And I'll make sure that the superintendent has that iWave video that you can watch. It's 3 minutes, and that I think will answer a lot of your questions why that is so important to get installed before you reopen.
Can I ask you just to follow up on that, Pat? How long will it take to install that at Putnam, for example?
We'll probably have it installed there by the first, by early January. Yeah, that would be correct. We are at the request of the superintendent, we're gonna prioritize all the high schools to be done first with the iWaves.
That video we showed 2 Mondays ago at our COVID-19 cabinet heads and the hospital updates. It's you need to see that video, the stark contrast of what we're doing going above and beyond. I just want to go to Commissioner Helen Colton-Harris. She said following the holidays. I think Helen will clarify. She's the expert. There's a number of days. Usually it's 10 days or so, could be even longer before you start to see the ramifications of gatherings. So Commissioner Colton-Harris, you know much more about it than I do. Could you just clarify the time frame after holiday get-togethers when a spike or surge could possibly occur again, or when you're able to view the numbers if something has occurred?
So we know that individuals shed the virus 2 to 3 days prior to potentially showing symptoms. Some individuals show no symptoms at all. Usually after a holiday, we look for 2 weeks post-holiday to start to see the surge. We're still seeing the surge from Thanksgiving, I believe, but we started to see that surge 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, around the 1st or 2nd week of December. I would also say to to School Committee Woman Gresham, your staff, I have reviewed the protocols with Jeannie Clancy, and everything that you asked for as far as self-certification for staff, temperature taking, is in that protocol document. So when the staff is able to share that with you, I think you'll be pleased about what has been put together already in anticipation of moving back into school buildings. But Mayor, we will probably start to the second week in January, start to see if there's going to be a spike. That's when we'll see it for the holidays around Christmas, Kwanzaa, and Hanukkah.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Mr. Carlton Harris. Any other questions or comments? And Vice Chair Collins, I'll go to Ms. Hurst.
Yeah, I still believe that we owe the public, we said we would decide on the second semester. I mean, if someone waved the magic wand on the 14th of January and all infection was gone away and all the buildings had everything installed, it would still take us a couple of weeks to get all the things that we need to have in place in order to start on the first day of the third semester. But we made a commitment to the public that we would make a decision on the second semester, and I think we should keep it and make a decision.
Can we clarify, Ms. Hurst?
I would also just add that we have parents, teachers, parents, we have a lot of people who are depending on this vote just so that they can go back and make plans with their employers, with their childcare providers. So I understand tabling it would just mean that we would extend the remote, but I think that sometimes giving people a date is really helpful.
Could that date be that at that point in time, date given, that is when the another reassessment is going to be done, so we can give some type of certainty? Danny, you mentioned Superintendent Warren, sorry, January 20. I mean,
well, January 28th would start the third quarter, so that would end the second quarter. I think even if we had a great working session on the 14th, you have to remember, and the staff has put a lot of plans together, like to address everything Barb was talking about. We'd love to have time to discuss that more with school committee. We'd also have to enter into negotiations with the various unions about returning. And during this time, I think during this surge, that would be very, very difficult. Most of the systems that went back early and didn't vote to stay remote as you did, went back and then they had to close down again. And I think that's twice as hard for families because they try to make plans, then they change the plans, and then you close down again and they have to make other plans. So certainly I don't think there's any chance of going back in before the 28th. I think the 28th is going to be difficult enough. So, and that would be with a small group if we could possibly do it by then, but it would all be contingent on those negotiations. But I think for second quarter, there's no chance in getting back in successfully. And, you know, LaTonya talked about earlier, the staffing, but the negotiations also, which would have a big impact on the staffing.
And the special would be Putnam because of the vocational technical aspect, and SPED, which you noted in your...
We'd like to do some of the high need SPED programs in the SLIFE in an earlier group. But again, that would be contingent on the surge rates coming down so we could get adequate staffing and conduct some negotiations, which again, you know, would be very, very sensitive with the unions because they're worried about the safety of the folks they represent, justifiably so. So I think it's safe to say we certainly couldn't return during the second quarter at this juncture, especially given the surge rates that are going on. We can explore it further as we go on after the working session, bringing Helen back in, you know, on the 14th, you have an idea of what's occurred over Christmas, how the rates are running. And then we could start looking at potentially putting something together. We've made a lot of plans, but I think, we need to do more work. And I think those negotiations are a very serious issue.
Ms. Naylor, Ms. Hurst.
I just want to reiterate, I do agree with all of my colleagues that we definitely need to, well, I don't know if everybody stated this, but I do agree that we need to have a vote tonight, even if that vote is simply to remain remote. And I do think that we should at least look at that date of the end of the marking period as a date But what I wanted to say as well, Superintendent, is I would really appreciate if we have a separate, including in your plan and in your phase-in. I'm not looking at necessarily the demographic piece of Putnam, I'm looking at the vocational side of it. So
Yeah.
I'm really that's what I'm really pleading for at this point is the vocational side. So what is the plan for Putnam? So could we talk about that in our January 14th meeting?
Absolutely.
Not just the general plan for everybody, but specifically also a separate plan of what Putnam look like and how do we really ensure, especially those seniors that are trying to finish out and get those certification hours. I mean, it could even look like something to the effect of only the seniors coming in for their vocational hours, you know, at some point. But I really think that is not the same situation as the demographics as a whole. Looking at the SPED or the SLIFE kids is definitely something we should do, but I don't think that's the same circumstance that I'm talking about when we come to the Putnam kids and their certification hours.
Right, and our proposal is going to have the VOC 10 to 12 at Putnam for the vocational classes that need the hours in our first tier group.
Okay.
So we're on the same page with that.
Ms. Hurst?
So, thank you, Mayor. Superintendent, so what I'm gathering based on what you've just said is that we likely should consider a vote until third quarter. And then if we can resume hybrid for the vocational schools, then we can reconvene. Because if we meet on January 14th, based on what the commissioner just said, that, you know, we don't start to see those surges until after the holidays, and the amount of time that it's going to prepare, we need to prepare to phase and transition back in, as well as negotiations. Realistically, we're not going back on the 28th or Monday the 30th.
No, I think that would be a stretch. I don't think we can do it. We could make plans to try to, if the surge rates go down, we might have some success in negotiations, and we fix the ventilation systems for a small phase-in group. But I don't think you'll have anyone back in by the 28th or 30th. I completely agree. But I think we know that already, so we can let the public know. We know that for sure, and could look into a future date when some things are in place where we feel comfortable with certain groups to take a look at.
Mr. Mayor?
Well, Ms. Hurst.
I was going to just say, you know, so I think that we should entertain, or our motion should be really clear that through or till the third quarter. And I didn't want to make a motion because I know Barbara and Maria want to talk. So I'm trying to be mindful.
Sure.
Let me go to Ms. Perez, then I'll go to Ms. Gresham, and then let's clarify a motion to give a set date. But that set date means looking at those specialized and then basing it on the public health with Commissioner Carlton Harris on the numbers, Director Sullivan on the physical plan, and our goal again, as long as it's safe health-wise, we're looking to get our kids back in there. So let me, Ms. Perez and then Ms. Gresham, sorry.
So for point of clarification, we are not returning until the third marking period?
It would be the soonest we could return, and I don't think we really could execute it right at the beginning of the third marking period.
So
we could do it as soon as possible after that.
So within that frame of time, we still have room for consideration. My concern is that I don't want to get back to the third marking period, be in the same position that we are tonight. So we need to establish some frame. How we gonna? I'm looking for the proper word. I just don't want to wait until today and then January, and then we'll be in the same predicament. So I'm for the third marking period because of all the other aspects that play in this role. But we should look for a day also for the third marking period that we should meet and have the public know ahead of time. I have a lot of constituents that are uncertain. Are we going back? Are we not going back? Is the schools going to stay closed for the whole year? And I think we need to look at those discussions as well.
Thank you, Ms. Gresham.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So yes, the third marking period, which will be around April, but in between that time, I think we as a school board need to meet very often within that time frame to make sure that we understand what we're doing, the plans that we have, that the superintendent have in place, that we know way ahead of time, not waiting until the third marking period or the week before the third marking period to make a decision. So we need to meet quite often between now and the third marking period.
Right.
And also, if Mr. Roach, Pat Roach, could get for me the number of custodian or janitorials that will be in the building, how many will be in there on a daily basis?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
So is there, and I know the superintendent has prelim plans that we presented the meeting and the town hall prelim and how structured that we go specifics in the hybrid. But I think what Vice Chair Collins has indicated and Ms. Hurst and others, we need to give some type of continuity to the families, to the students, to the staff, teachers, everybody associated with Springfield Public Schools on when we're going to start contemplating going back. And it's not going to be tomorrow. So is there a clarifying motion on the floor about a specific set date? Which,
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion that we remain in full remote learning for the second quarter.
And the second quarter is what, January 28th?
That's January 28th. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to go back.
No.
This motion is just that we stay in remote education until that point.
And in the meantime, reassessments are going to be occurring, whether there's a change at all or a high, okay.
And we'll spend all that time, as Mrs. Gresham and Mrs. Hurst and Mrs. Naylor said, flushing out the details of a reopening plan. And then we'll have to actually discuss that. Once we get it all worked out, we need to discuss that opening plan publicly as well, once we flush it all out. And that will give a message to people. They will see that, oh, this group might come back then. They'll have an idea. If once we flush out the details, we need to present it publicly.
Okay. So there's a motion on the floor for the 28th, Ms. Gresham, on the motion?
No, I have a question. I thought it was third marking period.
Right, me too.
That's what I thought.
No, I don't think the superintendent was saying that we should stay in remote all the way through the third marking period. I don't think that's what I heard.
That was my understanding.
I certainly said we definitely wouldn't be able to return during the second marking period, and I know we won't be able to return right at the beginning of the third marking period. I don't necessarily think we need to wait till April 8th to have an initial phase, and that would based on the surge rates and what goes on. But I think we know we're staying out for the second quarter and then need to re-explore at some point in the third quarter when an appropriate time to bring a phase-in group could be.
And that would be sped, possibly other groups.
We could talk in the January 14th meeting on what our priority groups would be and when and what phase-in. I mean, we have ideas on it, but I'd like to get school committee input on it.
So the motion on the floor is that we stay remote until, we're going to stay remote going into
maybe until further notice, until we have enough time to discuss it. Whatever the committee wants to do with that,
I'm totally confused.
Me too.
I'm being honest. I'm totally confused.
The end of the marking period is January 28th, Mrs. Gresham. So they're just saying, just for the rest of the second marking period, we will stay remote.
I know that for sure.
We will have met by the middle of January for our extensive meeting. And so at that point, when Commissioner gives us her report, then we'll know if there's still a surge. And if there's still a surge, then we'll be able to have in the next agenda that we may vote to extend or go hybrid or whatever, but at least letting the teachers and parents know that for the rest of the second marking period, we'll stay remote.
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor?
Let me, Ms. Gresham, go ahead.
Yeah, but I thought we was gonna be remote until the third marking period, which
Oh,
is.
the end of the, okay, so
End of the
that
third,
would be April 8th.
Yes, that's what I thought you said.
No, I said second, but it could end up being the third, Barb. I don't think we're gonna, the beginning of the third marking period, I do not think we're gonna be ready. There could be a point during the third marking period we're ready, and I'd leave that open unless the committee feels strongly they don't want to explore any hybrid entry until after April 8th. And that would be.
That, we're looking at Putnam, SPED, if it's appropriate.
Possibly before that, if we could bring a smaller group in safely, again, with a commissioner's recommendation and Patrick's, like to explore if there's an, appropriate opportunity during that third quarter. Not saying we definitely be able to do it, Barb. You may be right on that date, but just explore the option. So.
Because between now and January 30th, there's not a lot of time. There's not a lot of time for us to meet and make a decision. With all the questions we have to be answered.
Completely agree. Completely agree. I do agree. You're not going to get back in by January 30th. So do you want to explore an option at some point during the third quarter if the committee feels it's appropriate? Or are you advocating to say, let's wait till April 8th to explore any other option?
That's my thought. I mean, because I have a lot of questions.
There's a lot of work to be done. So,
but if it was a complete April 8th, just for clarification, some of the points you wouldn't be able to look at Putnam nor SPED. So if things trend the right way, those are two entities we wanted to look at. So we have to keep an open mind on that. Ms. Hurst, I know you wanted to.
So, I was just thinking as I was listening, April 8th isn't, or the start of the fourth quarter isn't a terrible idea based on the superintendent saying, we're going to need time. There's lots of moving parts here. I understand the need to get some of our other students in sooner. So, and I also know, and just looking that other districts, like I think it's Worcester, chose March 8th. I think that if we looked at something early spring or till April 8th, and with the caveat that if we are able to bring in our vocational students sooner, then we would reconvene and amend the vote that we've taken. But also keeping in mind that we need to be able to give people time to make that transition and make the necessary accommodations. But I think that if we look to do it after the surges, after flu season, and we're in the spring and hopefully have a better understanding of what's happening, that's not a terrible idea.
No, I agree.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Yes, and we have left out the ventilation. I think that's the major part that we need to look at it. Even if we want to go with January 28th, we need to look at the ventilation issue that we have. So that's why I was with Barbara. I thought we were just gonna go with the third marking period.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Director Sullivan has indicated that very hopeful all complete work will be done sometime in March, and that's the ventilation and everything on that. But
I'll be prepared to give you a report on your January 14th of where we're at and what we feel the schedule will be. We'll have a very good information by that date.
Thank you, Pat.
Mr. Mayor, may I add something?
Yes.
So I think another consideration is the vaccine. As we know, educators are going to be in phase 2, and they are second in phase 2, which means that potentially early April, we may be vaccinating educators. And I think that's also something you want to consider as you make these decisions.
That's a big.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That would certainly, I think, help us with the workforce issues and the negotiations. So that April 8th is really, I think, a solid recommendation.
Before I go to Ms. Naylor, If there was a motion leaving an opening, though, of the April 8th, with an opening of the Putnam situation, and the SPED, that it can be amended, that might be the way to send some type of continuity to the families and students and teachers. Ms. Naylor?
I was going to say, I don't think that we should wait until April 8th to take a vote. I think that if we are planning to come back in April, that we should at least have a vote in March so that we can again have people prepared for April if we're going to come back, and then we'll be aware of what the phase-in plan is going to look like and be able to go through all of that. I think if we wait till April to take a vote, then we push ourselves out another 3 or 4 weeks of phasing in and all of that stuff. I agree that we would be pushing it really quickly if we tried to put people back in at the end of January, but I think waiting until April 8th to say, let's decide, is then at a point where we're pushing. We're literally been remote almost all year, and then now we're saying, oh, by the way, you got a few more weeks left of school, let's go see each other.
You want to look at the 1 year?
I agree. You definitely wouldn't want to try to take a vote right near April 8th to return April 8th. You want to take a vote much sooner, but I'm hearing that. I'm hearing a lot of folks say they really don't want to bring any large groups back before April 8th. We could take a vote in mid-March or something, early March.
1 year, the anniversary marking COVID started. But then again, Helen's point's well taken. The teachers will not receive vaccines until sometime in April.
Yeah, they said February to April, and it's probably going to be more like April before they get the vaccine. So,
others, Moderna and others. Mr. Attorney Murphy and then Vice Chair Collins.
I'm sorry. I wasn't there a motion? Is there a motion on the floor? Didn't Mr. Collins make a motion?
28th of January.
Okay, so if the motion currently before us is to continue to January 28th remote learning, and there's certainly, as with respect to Ms. Gresham's concerns and Maria's concerns, we've continued this, but it is a fluid situation. We do have vocational kids, the vocational issue, also the special needs kids and our homeless kids. Like, I worry very much about where are our homeless kids going to school. And, so I think that we should be flexible, keep our flexibility. We're going to follow the guidelines by Dr. Carlton Harris. And, I think that why don't we, I'm prepared, if there's a motion on the floor, I'm prepared to second it. And just to let everyone know, I'm certainly willing to extend it if that's what needs to be done vis-a-vis vaccinations and other things that may occur. But I think we need to be nimble, we need to be flexible, and continuing this to January 28th is not the end of the world. We certainly hear the concerns, Ms. Gresham and Ms. Perez, of we don't want people to get sick, and we don't want people to get to get COVID. But I believe that by January 14th we're going to have some good data. So why can't we just continue this till January 28th, which I think is the end of the marking period, if I got that date correct, and we'll see what happens after that.
Vice Chair Collins and then Ms. Hurst.
Yeah, that was why I made the motion for January 28th, was that, and another thing, we need to hold our own feet to the cumulative feet to the fire, and it should be our goal on the 28th to have a plan accepted, adopted. Now, then you have to have a timeline for implementing the plan. But so if we can hold our feet to the fire and we can get a plan completed by January 28th, we'll have something to tell the public. Here's the plan. Now, yes, it's whatever that plan turns out to be, it's a rollout plan. to whatever. It doesn't mean you're actually going back to school right now. But that's the two. I mean, we got to give them, yes, we either are staying closed or we're not for the second market period. But our goal should be to have that plan ready on the 28th so we can then start talking about it with the public.
But then Chris, you got to make sure that we all are involved in that plan.
Oh, I said us.
Mr. Mayor?
Committee. I'm talking about the school.
Well,
committee.
I'm just saying.
Mr. Mayor?
Correct.
Yes, I still emphasize that we have too much in the plate right now. The vaccination for the staff, the ventilation. I mean, and we should not hold sequestered the community because they've been waiting. It was a promise after the town hall that we were going to take a decision. I think we could do the working session, but I'm not prepared to vote that we just say January 28th. There's too much in the plate right now that we need to balance and consider. I do agree with my colleague, Ms. Naylor said about the vocational part of looking at it separately, but I will not be in favor that we just say January 28th. We having the community sequestered, and they are asking me the question, my constituents, keep in mind that they need to do plan not for 30 days. That's the other problem that I have, making plans for 30 days, 30 days, 30 days. They need to know what the plan is gonna be. So that's my only concern at this point.
Thank you, Ms. President. Ms. Gresham? Ms. Gresham, oh, she's also, okay. There was a motion on the Ms. Naylor. Ms. Naylor.
So, listening, we're doing good. We're coming to a compromise. I think we're getting there. So I appreciate what you just said, Mrs. Perez, in that why don't we look to, why don't we set a date? And I'm considering what Mr. Collins said too. Why don't we set a date to say this is the goal for when we want to have a plan, right? So we're voting tonight. We know what we're probably are going to vote because we all pretty much said we want to vote. And then we establish a date that we reconvene for a vote, for a follow-up vote. But I do think that, I guess my concern is I don't want us to get stuck on the votes. I want us to get stuck on a plan and a timeline of what that plan is going to look like. And if it includes vaccination dates or expectations of when that's going to happen and all of that in the plan, then definitely do that. I think because of the passion that I'm hearing on tonight, that we'd be more than happy to find dates outside of the January 14th working session to be able to come up with and assist in whatever ways that we feel would be helpful to the superintendent and his team. But I do think, yes, we need to take a vote. And I do think we need to have a date as to when we're gonna reconvene and have a conversation. And if that's a 60-day thing, then it's a 60-day thing. If 30 days isn't sufficient, but I think that will help us at least move past tonight and then be able to have this conversation in a full discussion later on.
Ms. Hurst.
So I agree that we need to have a plan wholeheartedly, but I also think that based on what the superintendent said, January 28th, we know we are not going back. Like, we know that that is not feasible for a lot of different reasons. So perhaps it would be my suggestion that we vote to go out until the third quarter. If the superintendent believes that he can bring back the vocational, then he will reconvene us. But in the meantime, we can set our own date for when it is that we want to see a plan and when it's going to get executed, when it's going to get communicated to the public. But for those who are doing all of the planning, the teachers, the paras, the cabinet, at least they know what they're working with until this particular point in time. This is when we know that we will possibly be we won't be fully hybrid until that time. Because we all know that by January 20th, we're going to start to get the emails and we're going to start to get the calls. What's going to happen for third marking period? People want to know and they want to plan. And so we know that they're not coming back. Like, it's inevitable. I mean, I think the superintendent has been more than clear when he has said, there's just no way it's going to happen. So at the very least, I do think we need to go through the third quarter like Barbara and Maria have stated. I mean, the superintendent has stated.
What date is that again, Ms. Hurst?
So it ends April 8th.
It's the 8th.
So it would be a target date for a hybrid return on April 8th, and the opportunity to explore if there's a smaller group, like Latonia said, that could come back sooner. We could submit a plan if the COVID rates are going down and the vaccinations get done, and then the negotiations become more doable because it's more sensible. Then maybe we could get some kids back in before that, but the public would know that there wouldn't be a large-scale return before April 8th, and I think that's very realistic.
Well,
would you come back to us so that we would know if there would be any phase in?
Oh, we would. We're not going to do anything without you. You're going to have to prove everything. We come back. We talk about the plans. We talk about the phase-ins on the 14th at length, and then we have a meeting on the 28th also. And again, during that time, we'll see how the rates are going, and we can talk about what we agree to as a plan, and it'll be up to the school committee at the end of the day.
Yeah, that might be
absolutely. We'll bring you suggested opportunities working with staff, but it'll be a school committee decision. Absolutely.
Compromise would be open. We have an opening with the Putnam SPED. We have the physical plant, which Director Sullivan indicates sometime in March. We have Commissioner Colton Harris indicating on the vaccine front, but it leaves open, what Ms. Naylor has said and Ms. Hurst, that if we, ahead of time, if Putnam can go for that hands-on training, if the SPED could go, maybe some other specialized situations could go. So we leave that caveat. I know Vice Chair Collins had his hand up.
I did. I was going to suggest that February vacation is the 15th through the 22nd. That gives us over 10 weeks to work together, to get plans, to look at the infection rate, to gives us, and yet it's not all the way through the third quarter.
Right. So we get together before that date.
Monday, the 22nd, which would be coming back from February, maybe we could vote to stay in remote until that point. And hopefully we would have our plans made. Now, that doesn't mean everybody comes back on February 22nd. My guess is we're going to have a roll-in type of plan where some people come back at a time. What do you think about going through? That gives us that gives parents a date, and it gives us over 10 weeks to complete making a plan and getting all the stuff done.
You're cutting it in half. So his motion would be February, staying remote.
Until February 22nd.
February 22nd, without any question, unless hopefully knock on wood, a miracle occurs. And that gives some continuity. By that time, we'll have a plan. We'll have some on the how the vaccine is going, the physical plant at that time, improvements, and whether there's a surge or a spike. That could be a good halfway mark. That doesn't necessarily mean, so you know, if I'm correct, I'll let the school committee members obviously jump in. We would say we are voting tonight to stay remote until February 22nd. At that point in time, reassessment occurs again. In the meantime, if something breaks for Putnam or SPED, that leaves it open. So, I mean, I think we're all good on that. It's just the date. It's the date.
So Mr. Mayor, if I may, so why are we keep changing? I mean, we talked about the third marking period, when in March, Mr. Sullivan said everything should be in place regarding ventilation. So why we keep switching and changing? Why can't we stick with the third marking period?
Which would be April 8th, Superintendent Warwick? Would that be the date?
I think to get everyone back in, you'd certainly, or a large group back in, it probably April 8th is probably realistic. There could be some smaller groups we may be able to bring back sooner if the committee feels comfortable. So if that's what the committee wants to do, that's what we'll.
What's the consensus of the committee if it was April 8th with the caveat, the opening of specialized groups, could Putnam sped others? By that time, the physical plant should be done, would be done. The vaccines, we know more about the vaccines. There's other Moderna, other companies that are coming on board now. And the superintendent does have to negotiate with the various unions too.
You know, that's why I can't give you an exact date, because it's all subject to successful negotiations. Now, if some of those key pieces play out, I think it would make the negotiations more doable.
But I just want to leave that we have the open though for Putnam, SPED. Maybe there's another specialized group that needs
The
to come
SLIFE kids,
that
with a huge interruption in education before they came to us.
for April 8th if everything's in line. So maybe that's a motion that could be. I think everybody might be able to agree on that motion. Doesn't preclude anything opening up or going to a hybrid transition or earlier than that, but
I think, Mr. Mayor, I guess my concern is I agree with the statement that we made earlier about coming back or looking almost for a mass entry, at least at some point around April, right? I agree with that piece of it. I think the part that I'm getting hung up on is if we don't have a date set as to when we're gonna vote on that plan, whatever that plan is, I don't feel comfortable voting tonight and saying that we're gonna remain remote until April 8th. And then at some point, we're gonna make a decision that we're gonna, as to when we'll bring back students from Putnam or what have you. Like having a date like a mid or end of February or early March at least gives us a date to say, we've reviewed our plan, this is what we agree to, and whatever phase-in that we're agreeing on, now we know what the dates are. We could set those dates at that time as to when kids will actually start to phase in. I just feel that if we wait until April for an entry, that we're just leaving too many spaces of vagueness where it's like, when is this gonna happen or when is that gonna happen? At least we get to give ourselves a hard date as to when we'll reconvene, look at the timeline, and then make recommendations as to when that implementation of that phase-in approach will be.
Well, Vice Chair Collins has a motion on the February 22nd with an open, with a leaving open for specialty groups if possible. Am I correct, Vice Chair? You've amended to say February 22nd now?
Yeah, I did that because it's well beyond the 6 to 8 weeks that Director Sullivan said he needed. And God willing, if we do have a spike be Christmas, it should have started to subside by that point. Not meaning that we wait till then to adopt a plan. We should adopt a plan as soon as we possibly can so the public knows what to expect. What will happen? How will it happen? But yeah, the reason I picked February 22nd was it's well beyond the time that Commissioner Sullivan said he needed, and hopefully it would be beyond any surge we get out of Christmas, and we can take a look at them. But I'd like us to keep our working on that plan and adopt that even earlier.
We could maybe set a target of February 11th for a plan to have it finalized, but we could talk about it at every school committee meeting before that date, if that's reasonable.
So, Mr. Mayor.
On the motion, okay, Ms. Perez, is there a second?
I don't know why are we locked with February or March and not go to April and have room for all that. I still feel for the safety of the staff. And I know the vaccine is not going to be ready by February, and by what I hear. That's one of my biggest concern. And I know going back to the union, that variable itself is going to be a hurdle. I just don't want to rush things just because we want to have January, February. We should have some type of room that we could work on this plan and the community have a set day. It's been long gone. I am going with a third market period because I feel comfortable that everyone will be at the same phase.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, that was not a motion that Chris made, was it?
Yes, it was, but I didn't hear it seconded.
I didn't hear there was, I didn't hear it was a motion.
Yeah, no, I did make a motion.
I thought you was making a suggestion.
Well, he had an original motion of the 28th.
I was making it a motion, but I did not hear a second, so it's not, if it hasn't been seconded, it's not there anyway.
But you made a motion on the 28th, right?
Yes.
January 28th, then
nobody was, that never got seconded. So that died.
And then you mentioned the 22nd of February. But that wasn't a motion, right?
Yes, it was a motion.
Yes.
I didn't hear it as a motion.
It was a motion, but so far it has not gotten a second.
Well,
I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it as a motion.
Attorney Murphy?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I just want to chime in here for a minute. So the motion on the floor is that Chris is saying that we hold off until February 22nd.
We stay
remote until February 22nd.
And then it's
have meetings prior to that. The suggestion by other members to make sure that we have a plan. And my understanding is that with respect to Ms. Carlton Harris, we would have enough data about the virus and vaccinations, and we can always be nimble, which we need, because no one knows really what's going to happen.
No.
But so I just want to make sure you made there's a motion on the floor to remain remote until February 22nd, and then we would revisit it prior to that.
That's there, but if it gets a second, once again.
Well, I just want to make, if I'm going to second it, I want to make sure I know what I'm seconding.
Yeah, no, you stated it correctly.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm, there's no perfect solution here, but I'm happy to second that if it moves things along. And I mean, I don't agree with continuing it to the end of the third marking period. I think we should be more flexible than that. I mean, as you guys know, I have 3 kids in the Springfield Public Schools. It's imperative that we keep our kids and our teachers and employees safe. But I think it's also imperative that we, make sure that the most important thing is to make sure that our children go back to school at some point, particularly our SPED kids. You heard some very heartfelt comments in our public meeting about the SPED kids and also our homeless kids and our vocational kids and a lot of our other kids, and a lot of our buildings are safe. There's some that are not, but they should be all safe by March, is what I'm hearing. So I'm prepared, if it's going to move this along, just, so we can at least take it to a vote, to second Mr. Collins's motion.
Motion by Vice Chair Collins, seconded by Attorney Murphy. Again, clarify the motion, and the roll call vote is required.
There wasn't a motion.
Yeah, there was a motion on the floor by Vice Chair Collins to February 22nd, seconded by Attorney Murphy. Am I correct on that motion? So now roll call vote is required. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Hurst?
No.
Attorney Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Naylor?
No.
Ms. Gresham?
No.
Ms. Perez?
No.
Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins?
He's muted.
Aren't you lucky? Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
He's muted.
Yes, I think the motion fails.
Yes.
All right, well, we got the good, we got clarified, got it out of the way. Yes, Ms. Hurst.
May I make a motion?
Yes, you may.
I'm going to make a motion that we extend through the third marking period with the caveat that we meet or get an update at every school committee meeting and an additional meeting to go through and execute a plan to be rolled out prior to April 8th.
Motion by Ms. Hurst. Oh, did you? Seconded by Ms. Gresham. Denise, did you want to add about that?
I wanted to add in and asked for the chair to call an emergency meeting should we be able to bring back our other populations sooner than that, such as SLIFE, ELL, vocational, those with special needs.
Okay, good. All right, so motion, Pat, if you had motion by Ms. Hurst, seconded by Ms. Gresham. On the date, just chronologically, that would be April 8th, or prior to that, we'd be working toward those specialized populations. If not, if things go better, even more. So that's the motion by Ms. Hurst, seconded by Ms. Gresham. Any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Ms. Naylor?
What would constitute an emergency meeting for us to be able to make that decision? And at what would be the time frame that we would give parents so that they could plan for a return? And then my third piece that kind of couples with that is especially concerning the folks who are concerned about uniforms. We want to give folks time to be able to prepare.
Agreed. I think that if we're using the session in January, then perhaps that's a time where we can identify all of those dates. But we know that based on the presentation that we got on Tuesday night, that there was like a 2-week transition phase, if I recall correctly, where we would need to give people notice. I do think that 2 weeks is perhaps not enough, and maybe we can talk about that. But if we, at the very least, we have to be able to communicate it with parents, and I think that we're going to need to be able to give them concrete dates and in enough notice to do so. So I think we can set that. If we say we have to give these families 30 days so that they know, then I think that that's, that might be appropriate. But I'm open to that. I just think that it's important for us to hear what the superintendent is saying when he says it's just not going to be possible, right? I think he has said that on more than one occasion. Like, this is a huge lift, and it's going to take a lot of internal and external providers and vendors. But I think we've also made it very clear that there are some vulnerable populations out there that really need to get back into school. And so my hope would be that if we could get them in sooner, or that they see that they can get them in sooner, that they would do that. And I don't think we can underestimate how long it takes to have negotiations.
Right, which is exactly, I guess the process of the negotiations, and then when we would be able to come back is what is in my head. Because if we say we're coming back April 8th, let's just say that's what we're throwing out there. We want to start hybrid on April 8th. Then we're expecting that the teachers will be prepared and negotiating to come back on April 8th. But if we have an emergency meeting and we decide, oh, well, we can get them to come back a little earlier, then they don't agree to that because the negotiations haven't been finalized, then we can't bring them back earlier. So that's why I was trying to push for a vote like March 8th-ish, because then at least it would give us time to say, if we are coming back or planning to come back April 8th, at least we voted on it and reviewed the plan and know what's expected. Even if we don't come back March 8th, I don't care if we come back March 8th, but I at least want to vote prior to that April 8th date, because things may come up and we may have circumstances that may make it possible to come back before April 8th. So that's why I was saying initially, not for us not to underestimate what could happen if we are working together towards a cause. I know there's a lot of teachers that do want to come back, and there's a lot that don't, but the spring is realistic because we can open the windows and people can have classes outside, and there's just all these wonderful ways that people can make waves to keep people safe, right? That's not inside of the building anyways. But at the same time, I want us to be careful that when we vote, we're not tying our own hands and then the union saying, well, you said April 8th and we're not coming back before April 8th.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Perez, yes.
I think part of the motion, could we read the motion was, I think it was by yourself that we were voting for the third marking period, April 8th, but we were gonna look. I know it was part of the motion that we will reconvene before April 8th. Is that clear? I just want to be clear on the motion.
Superintendent put across on his prelim plans, any decisions made, there would have to have a 2-week transitional period anyway.
Certainly, probably more than that, like people said. So we'd have to meet well before April 8th to vote on anything. Or if we're going to return certain phase-in groups, if there was a school committee meeting and we were able to, things were going in the right direction, we could get some in, like the Vote Kids or something. We'd propose it and then agree on a timeline that makes sense. And then we'd have to go, and the hardest piece could be the negotiations. But I think as you approach the spring, the negotiations get a lot easier. You know, the building ventilation pieces are taken care of, the vaccine, things like that. It could go well, and we know that until we can get it negotiated, we can't execute it.
So there's a motion by Ms. Hurst.
So you got the caveats that if we had an opportunity to bring them back sooner, then we could explore it, but April 8th would be the large group, third marking period, which everyone suggested.
Motion on the floor, seconded by Ms. Gresham, on a target date, but leaves leeway for the specialized groups, and the appropriate transitional time would be given if the public health numbers show that the jump can be made. The physical plan, Director Sullivan and his team do a fantastic job, so I know they'll be done by then. The vaccine possibly could be kicking in high gear. So the motion again by Ms. Hurst, seconded by Ms. Gresham. Roll call. Patty.
Mayor, I'm sorry. Could I just get a clarification on the motion?
Yes. Yeah.
What is the exact motion that we're voting on now?
Ms. Hurst, could you clarify your motion again?
I made the motion that we extend remote learning until the end of the third or through the third quarter, with the caveat that we get an update at our school committee meetings, and that we also have an opportunity to review the plan. There was no date set for that, Mr. Murphy.
Well, so just if I could just, what is the end of the third quarter, that date?
That was the
April 8th.
And that the mayor convene an emergency meeting or convene a special meeting should the superintendent determine that other populations are able to phase in sooner than the 8th.
I think, Attorney Murphy, April 8th would be, if everything went right, a buy-in with everybody coming back. Prior to April 8th, the specialized groups can be looked at if it is safe and sound, public health wise and physical plant wise.
So,
thank you.
So you are leaving the door open to some groups coming back prior to April 8th, is what I heard in your motion. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I felt like I've been hearing, actually about, specifically about the vocational students.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Ms. Perez.
Could we discuss that at our working session? Because then we have more room for asking questions and all that.
I think we're going to have a lot of meetings, to tell you the truth.
Yes. We need a lot of meetings between now and then.
Yes.
So there is a motion again on the floor by Ms. Hurst. I think it's a good, plausible compromise and leave some open, leave some concrete dates, possibilities. Seconded by Ms. Gresham. Roll call vote is required. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Hurst,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
No.
Ms. Naylor,
Yes.
Ms. Gresham,
Yes.
Ms. Perez,
No.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
Yes, more than sufficient vote. This matter passes. Thank you very much. Maria, I still think we accomplished what you were looking for with that on the motion.
Yeah, I thought that's what you wanted, Maria.
No, no. What you expressing is looking at coming the groups back. What I've been saying all along with the third marking period, we have to look at all the variables. Now, right now, if we're saying this group is coming back before ahead of time, there's one variable that is staying out of the play.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's only
what I'm saying.
Yeah,
so I'm looking at all the variables in it there. So that's my concern.
That it was good compromise. That's if everything falls into place. If not, okay. Well, there are no informational items. Reports of standing committees, student relations concerns. Ms. Gresham.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Gresham. Buildings and Maintenance Committee, Vice Chair Collins. No, you said no report. Okay. C, Legislative Contracts Committee, Ms. Perez.
No report at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. D, Curriculum Programs Committee, Ms. Hurst.
No report at this time, Mr. Mayor.
First, Budget and Finance Committee, Vice Chair Collins.
We dealt with the item in the regular agenda.
Thank you, Collins. F is Vocational Education Committee, Murphy.
I think we heard a lot about vocational education tonight, Mayor.
You did your job, Mark. Okay. All right. Thank you, Attorney Murphy. G, Technology Committee, Ms. Naylor.
No report, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Naylor. School Safety Committee, Ms. Gresham.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Gresham. Special Subcommittee Staff Demographics, Ms. Perez. We had information tonight.
Yes, we mentioned it tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. I don't know if Nazir Jennings, Naz is on from Springfield Public Day High School. He is the student representative to the school committee report. Naz, I don't know if you're on. If you did hang in there, we appreciate it. I do not believe he is on right now. Hope to see you, speak to you soon, Naz. Report of the superintendent, Superintendent Warwick.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to have Lydia and Dwayne just give us a quick sports update first, because there's been a delay in the sports start. So if Lydia, you don't mind with Dwayne giving us a quick update on this.
Assistant Superintendent Martinez and AD Dwayne Early, please.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So we just wanted to inform you that the Pioneer Valley Interscholastic Committee has voted to start the new winter season on January 11th instead of the original January 4th, and extending it at the other end also to end on February 28th instead of February 19th. So again, winter sports, the dates will be January 11th through February 28th. That gives us more time to test the students and to get prepared for the winter sports. And then we also wanted to let you and the public know that we are asking the students that will be participating in basketball and or swimming that they need to get in touch with their school nurses right away in order to get the clearance that they need to be able to play starting on January 11th. As of right now, we only have approximately 14 students that have signed up for those physicals. And so we want to remind the public that the physicals do still have to happen and that they need to get in touch with the school nurses. All they have to do is call the schools that they go to get that process going.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Martinez. Any questions or comments, Assistant Superintendent Martinez? Ms. Hurst?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Assistant Superintendent Martinez, are those 14 students because nobody, sorry, my kids have yet to go to bed. Are they because those are the only ones that have signed up? Like, are those the only ones that have expressed interest?
No, we have tons that have expressed interest, but they just haven't followed through with the school nurses. And so that's why we wanted to bring it up tonight with the viewing public to remind them that the final interest is when they call the nurse's office and express their opinion and fill out the paperwork. Jeannie, the commissioner, myself, and Dwayne have been meeting and keeping a close eye on just the students that are coming in. With the winter break coming on December 23rd, and most folks going on vacation, we just want them to be prepared and ready to go for January 11th, or we won't be able to go through with the sports if we don't have enough students to play.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Martinez. Any other questions or comments? Anything from
Thank you, Lydia.
early? Dwayne, you're all set.
All set. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But as Lydia alluded to, we really need to make a strong push to the public to get the students who are interested to have all their paperwork filed with the nurse before the 23rd, so that we can try to plan correctly for the season as well as for the COVID testing.
Thank you, AD. Questions or comments? AD Early?
Just, Mayor, if I could just briefly, I just want to thank you, Ms. Martinez and Mr. Early. You know, in those very difficult times for sports, obviously a lot of challenges, and it's great that we've been able to continue. We got a great tradition here in Springfield, and I just thank you guys for keeping it going, and we hopefully will win a couple of championships this winter.
Thank you, Attorney Murphy. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll go back to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Dwayne and Lydia have done a fabulous job, but I also want to commend our health commissioner, Helen Calton, because of the health implications. She's been a tremendous asset with all of our plans. So we so appreciate Helen. Just a note that our meals distribution, since we closed down last March, we're going to go over 5 million meals distributed by this weekend. So an incredible effort by Pat Roach and the Sodexo team. Food insecurity during this pandemic is a serious issue, and we've really done a lot to help with that. I want to thank the committee and everyone who put together, Paul, Zell, Lydia, the team that put together the town hall, because I thought it was a huge success. Over 5,000 people participating again, so that was wonderful. We have some good news on the sports front. We got 2 Division I commitments for full scholarships for our central team. We have Terry Lockett, who's going to go to Syracuse. He's going to start actually the second semester at Syracuse with a full boat and major in sports journalism. So that's huge. Along with Terry Lockett, we have Trey Cavan, who's going to go to Merrimack and major in business administration and finance. So just showing you why it's so important to keep those sports programs going so our kids have these kind of opportunities. We're talking major D1 footballs, and they're just the ones we know of right now. Those are the D1 commits already. So I thank the school committee for their work to keep these sports programs going, because those are the kind of things that happen because of that. And I just would like to wish everyone happy holidays.
Thank you, Superintendent Warren. Any questions or comments on the superintendent's report? Okay, hearing none.
Mr. Mayor, I just had a question for the superintendent. The emails that we get from Azelle are really helpful. I think that those are really great. I actually am responsible for sending them out from my institution. But I just wondered, are we seeing any sort of trends in schools? Because I know that the commissioner has sometimes talked about, or oftentimes talks about, the zip codes. Are we seeing that reflected in specific schools?
It seems to be pretty spread, but I'd love Jeannie to speak to it because she probably has better details than I do. But it seems to be pretty spread. Jeannie, can you answer Denise, please?
At this time, there doesn't seem to be any clustering in schools. It's the numbers are clearly up, and we're tracking students too. It's wide range.
Wide range. Well, 27 staff in the last 2 weeks, and again, spread all over the district, and most of them working remotely, by the way. So it's not, and then the kids are again all many different places, but it's that surge that our city is facing right now, and actually the Commonwealth is facing. That's going on, and it really, that's with us in remote. So I appreciate the school committee's votes tonight because of that.
Thank you. I just wondered if there was a trend or if there was, particular pockets.
There's been no spread in a school at this time.
Okay.
And a lot depends upon where families live, but that's how widespread the virus is in Massachusetts. So not all our staff is from Springfield.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Numbers we get from Commissioner Helen Carlton Harris from the Maven system and her collaboration with the DPA, we are all Springfield. We get all Springfield numbers, and you have some staff obviously that does not live within the city limits on that, so we don't get that. Ms. Gresham, you had a question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I want to ask Mr. Superintendent if we can get a copy of the presentation that Azale did tonight.
Sure.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, the superintendent? Okay, hearing none. Unfinished business. Oh, okay, Latonia, I didn't know you had your hand moved there. I'm just.
I was trying to hold my head up so I don't go to sleep. No, say.
Any new business? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion on the floor to adjourn?
Don't move.
I just like the hat. I mean, it's a whole different thing with the hat on. You got the Christmas tree and the hat.
I was shoveling out. You know what I mean?
I just want to say that.
Well, thanks, Murph. There's a motion by.
Second.
Okay.
Thanks, Maria.
Maria's waving a flag now. A second by Ms. Perez. So roll call vote is required because this is a Zoom meeting. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Hurst,
Yes, and happy holidays, everyone.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes. Happy holidays to everybody.
Ms. Naylor,
Yes, season greetings.
Ms. Gresham,
Yes, happy holidays to everyone.
Ms. Perez,
Yes, Feliz Navidad.
Mr. Collins.
Happy holidays? No.
You don't want to adjourn?
No.
You didn't
Mayor
vote for it?
Sarno.
Yes. Happy and joyous, healthy holidays to each and every one of you. And Maria said Feliz Navidad. I'll say it in Italian. Buon Natale. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We do care. That's why these meetings go along. A lot of work gets done in the subcommittees, and we want to make sure we're methodical and thorough for you and your families and our kids. God bless you all. Good health, and we're going to have a better 2021. We're out.